3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the Play Show, yet not overly ostentatious studios of Sports Radio 94 WIP here in beautiful Philadelphia. This is a Monday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all great local Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course always streaming live on YouTube. 855-212-4227 is the number to jump on in. That's 855-212-4227. You could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter X at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. I'm live in Philadelphia today. We'll take you all the way up until 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. I'm heading to the Monday Night Football game tonight to conclude Week 2 as the Atlanta Falcons do walk in 0-1 after losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, and they will be going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles return home after kicking off their football season on a crappy field in Brazil, where the Eagles were able to edge out a victory up against the Green Bay Packers. Trey Boston's going to stop by at 5:20 p.m. Eastern time, the former Carolina Panthers defensive back, and we had a crazy day of football yesterday on the NFL gridiron, and also a crazy Saturday of college football as well. We'll touch on all those storylines, but we have to start with the biggest news right now in the NFL, and we have our first benching of the season, and you can probably understand where this one is coming from, or maybe not, when the Carolina Panthers elect to bench Bryce Young. Now, it's like kind of stunning. We were getting ready, and this news broke within the last hour. We were getting ready for the show, and Samter calls me, and he goes, "Did you see the Bryce Young news?" And I was like, "What Bryce Young news?" He goes, "Well, it just broke two minutes ago from Tom Pelissero that we have Bryce Young getting benched by the Carolina Panthers." And let me just say this, because the first question I had was, whose decision was this? Because if it was David Tepper's decision, I would be irate, and I would be slamming David Tepper today because he's the most incompetent owner in the NFL, and under his tutelage, the Carolina Panthers have been an absolute bleep show. They are the worst-run organization currently in the NFL. But I did my due diligence on this topic before formulating an opinion, and I heard Dave Canales speak. Some excerpts of it. We'll play you that in just a bit. And Dave Canales made it clear, and I mean abundantly clear, at his press conference today when he announced that Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, is taking over in Carolina for the Panthers, and they're benching Bryce Young, that this was a Dave Canales-driven decision. So let me just ask a simple question. And I'm not defending Bryce Young. Bryce Young, so far, as a pro quarterback, has been terrible. Bryce Young is arguably the biggest bust in the history of the NFL. Because even if they go back to him midway through the season or at the end of the season, when you give up on someone a year and 2 games into his tenure as the team's quarterback, knowing how they move mountains to go get him in the draft, this is over. Even if he plays again, Bryce Young, as the franchise quarterback, or the thought of Bryce Young being the franchise quarterback of the Carolina Panthers, done, finished after today. There's no going back from here, even if you insert him back on the field, because there's no redemption story here. But assuming this is Dave Canales' decision, and it's bizarre because I don't usually give the Panthers the benefit of the doubt, and I have extreme trust issues with David Tepper, but I actually believe Dave Canales. Like, the first instinct I had was, this has to be a David Tepper move. This has to be David Tepper putting his hands in the cookie jar, and boom, David Tepper not allowing his football people to make the decisions. But I actually believe Dave Canales, the new head football coach in Carolina, that this was his decision. Because if it wasn't, how do you rationalize it? How do you justify the decision? So this is Dave Canales making a huge move, and I wonder what this means for the future of Dave Canales. But before we get to the future of Dave Canales, and before we get to the future of the Carolina Panthers, if I'm David Tepper today, I'm asking Dave Canales, assuming that this is his decision, why did I hire you? Why did I hire you as the head football coach of this team? And I understand the Panthers because they're in a miserable, incompetent, inept state that they weren't going to get a big name. But you sold me on the Dave Canales hire because he has done well with quarterbacks in the past, saving Geno Smith's career in Seattle. We saw what happened with Baker Mayfield last year in Tampa Bay. So if I'm David Tepper, I'm starting to think about the future of Dave Canales, and I can't believe I'm saying this, because I really thought Canales would be back next year, but there's no guarantee now that Dave Canales is going to come back. Because the only reason the two reasons Dave Canales is hired is, number one, they couldn't get a bigger name. And number two, if you're trying to make sure that this hire was a good one and you're trying to sell me on the hire, it's all about trying to fix Bryce Young. And in all likelihood, with what we've seen so far on the field, Bryce Young is fractured beyond repair in that organization with the Carolina Panthers. But you give up on him, Dave Canales, after 2 games, and I get it. They were 2 lousy games. You know, Bryce Young, I know he probably doesn't operate this way, but he should be thanking Dave Canales for benching him, because he would have got killed with the team in front of him. And also, some of this is on Bryce, as Bryce has been a horrible decision maker in the NFL, and he looks just too small to play the position. And there can be smaller guys that can play the position. We saw what Drew Brees has done, you know, for years prior to that, Russell Wilson as well. But Bryce Young just doesn't look like a pro quarterback. But the part to me that I still can't wrap my head around is why Dave Canales was hired as the coach of the Carolina Panthers if you're going to bench Bryce Young after 2 games. Like, the Panthers this year, it's not about winning games. I know all NFL teams will say, we want to win the most amount of games possible. The Panthers, if they had a good season this year, they just wouldn't be picking 1 in the NFL draft. But if it wasn't 1, at lowest it was going to go was 3. And we all know, and Stu, sorry to do this because I know the Raiders ended up having a big victory yesterday up against the Ravens. It would be very Raider-like after that big win by the Raiders up against the Ravens. The Raiders play the Panthers this week, for Andy Dandy Dalton to go get a victory and upset Stu after his football team is 1-1. But we'll get back to that coming up in a bit, because what can you expect out of Andy Dalton? Like, this Panthers team, they are going to have the number 1 overall pick. The only team that I think is in contention, or the 2 teams that could be in contention to usurping the Panthers for the number 1 overall pick, are the New York Giants or the Denver Broncos. Like, I know my Patriots lost yesterday, but they took the Seahawks to overtime. They beat the Bengals in week 1. I'm not saying the Patriots are good, but they're better than what people think. So those are the 3 teams vying for the number 1 overall pick. And the Giants defense, even though it's not been stellar, to say the least, to start off this season, the Giants defense will win them a few games. And you look at the Denver Broncos, I'm not a huge fan of Sean Payton anymore. And Bo Nix, man, everyone all jacked up over a few preseason games. He's looking like Bo Picks in the NFL with some of those decision-making skills yesterday, the lack of them. And the Broncos, yeah, they don't have that good of a team, but they still have more than the Carolina Panthers. So the Panthers are heading to the number 1 overall pick. And right now, it's like, okay, that's one thing to head to the number 1 overall pick. It's not like putting Andy Dalton in there is really going to move you that far back. It's not like you put in Andy Dalton to go win games here from week 3 and on, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, gee golly, the Panthers, they're going to the playoffs. Oh, gee golly, the Panthers are going to go contend for a division championship. Like, no, that's not going to happen. So that's why this move doesn't make sense to me. I get it. Bryce Young looks cooked. But with how much they gave up to get him, you need to continue to throw him out there, and you need to just see if there's any way that you could salvage his career. And after 2 games, for Dave Canales, assuming that's true and what he said, everything is true, for Dave Canales to make that decision, I just sit back here in my chair and I go, why the heck was Dave Canales even hired? Why are you hiring Dave Canales when the idea of bringing Canales was trying to fix Bryce Young? Not definitely fixing him, trying to fix Bryce Young for what he did in Seattle and for what he did with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a year ago. And you say bye-bye to Bryce, basically, after 2 games? Like, what? But that's the Carolina Panthers. That's this organization. They're not an organization where I could try to explain anything they do and try to make it sound like I know what the heck I'm talking about. Because this organization, you tell them to turn left and you tell them all the benefits of turning left, they turn right, just for the sake of doing so. So now, let's try to figure out what the Panthers do moving forward, because this season's over. This season was over after week 1 when myself, who's an idiot, by the way, said that they were going to beat the New Orleans Saints. So, and the Saints are now 2-0 to start the year. Nice job beating up on the Cowboys yesterday as well. And the real drama Dallas choking Cowboys are back. But this season was already over for the Panthers after week 1. So now, who's going to be your quarterback of the future, and will the coach be back next year? Because if I'm David Tepper, I am listening to my coach today, and he wasn't blindsided by this. You know, Tepper has his hands all over the organization. So he's not blindsided by this, but he hired Dave Canales in some part to help fix or try to fix Bryce Young. And if this was made clear after 2 games that Bryce Young is someone that they can't fix and he's broken, and let's just go to Andy Dalton at the age of 36, yeah, I think it's in play for Dave Canales, and this would be back-to-back years. Frank Reich didn't even make it through the whole season. I think Canales at least make it through the season where he's one and done as well. Or you could say, well, this is Canales inheriting Bryce Young. This is Dave Canales saying, okay, he's not the guy, but let me show you that my team, the rest of the way, even if they don't win a lot of games, with a roster that is extremely, extremely dull, let me show you that we could at least be competitive, or they could at least have some fight. They will have a bunch of losses, but they'll be close, ugly losses, and I could show you my worth, and then a draft from now, or maybe even 2 drafts from now, I end up picking the quarterback. But here's the problem with this. David Tepper, the owner, has 0 patience. 0! He has no patience. And he could say, oh, here's the plan, and these are the details of the plan, X, Y, and Z, but when push comes to shove, before you can get from X to Y, Tepper will change the plan. So I'll give the Panthers free advice here. David Tepper, I can't stand your guts. I think you're the worst owner in the league. I think you've been a joke ever since you got into the league, and you have no patience whatsoever. And thankfully, Daniel Snyder is out of the league for many reasons, but now you're the owner that everyone's laughing at. But you know what? I like to help people when they're in need. You know, I like to help people even when David Tepper has done a lot of dumb things, like throwing water or whatever it was, drinks in fans' faces. I will even try to lend you a helping hand because you could use it. If I'm the Carolina Panthers, what I would do is this: lose as many games as possible this year. That's not going to be difficult. This team sucks. This team blows. This team is terrible. But you have your own draft pick this year. You didn't have your own draft pick, your first-round pick last year. We all know that turned into Caleb Williams with the Chicago Bears. So here's what I would say to the Carolina Panthers. When you are picking number 1 in this year's draft, in the 2025 NFL draft, don't use the pick. Do not use the pick on a quarterback. You take that pick and you trade it to a team like, I don't know, the Giants or whoever else is going to be starving and craving for a quarterback, and you let them trade you future assets, and you have them move up into the number 1 spot, and they get to pick who they want. And you may be saying, Zach, well, you're benching Bryce Young. They need a quarterback. Why aren't you taking a quarterback? Because I don't believe any of these quarterbacks in this year's draft are generational talents. I don't. I don't think Shedeur Sanders is a generational talent. I don't think Carson Beck is a generational talent. I don't think Jalen Milroe, whoever it is, Quinn Ewers, whatever quarterback you want to tell me, in this year's draft class right now, I don't think any of them are generational talent. And this roster for the Panthers is horrible. It's a rancid roster. So get some draft picks back, and then in 2026, when you're probably picking in the top 5 and in all likelihood picking number 1 overall again, then you take the quarterback. That's what I would do. And for Dave Canales, you need to show me, if you're telling me that Bryce isn't the guy and Bryce is broken and he doesn't give you a better chance to win, and you as a quarterback guru can't fix him, then you need to show me this year that your team, even if you don't win a lot of games, they respond to your coaching. And if they respond to your coaching, I'll let you be a part of the decision-making process in 2026 when we draft the quarterback. Or I'll allow you to be back as the head coach in 2025. But if this is the same embarrassing play from the Panthers and there's 0 improvement, I would get rid of Dave Canales after 1 year. And a week ago, I was adamant. I was very confident that Dave Canales was going to be back as the head coach of the Panthers. But now, when he puts all of his poker chips in the table and he says, hey, Mr. Tepper, I'm benching Bryce Young after a year and 2 games with only 2 games on my watch, whew, that makes you reevaluate everything. All righty, Stu, I got to ask you this. Here's the question I'll ask you, because I would say for years, Jamarcus Russell was probably the answer on who's the biggest draft bust in the history of the NFL. with what has happened with Bryce Young after moving the mountains that they did to go acquire Bryce Young, and also, if you want to believe it, and I think it's true, David Tepper, when Reich wanted to draft C.J. Stroud, basically saying, no, we're drafting Bryce Young and pushing the Panthers to draft Bryce Young. Is Bryce Young officially the biggest bust in the history of the NFL from a number one pick? Is it move over Jamarcus Russell, Bryce the bust in terms of Bryce Young?
I don't think it's move over Jamarcus yet. I still think he is the number one guy for that. But when you consider that they gave up basically another number one overall pick to get him, and we'll see what Caleb Williams is, that's where it gets to the point where maybe, like, I don't think he's a worse player than Jamarcus, but when you look at the trade, it might be the worst decision, maybe.
So it's like asking you, what disease would you rather have? Honestly, like this, like the answer to this question is basically what that answer would be. You want none of them. I actually think Jamarcus Russell is no longer the biggest bust in the history of the NFL, because you just hit on it. The Raiders drafted Jamarcus Russell. He didn't want to put in any work. He had all the talent, and he just had no desire to be a good pro quarterback. It's unfortunate, but the Raiders had that pick because of their own incompetence. The Carolina Panthers traded a large amount of resources. And not only did they trade a large amount of resources, their coach in Frank Reich, he wanted C.J. Stroud, who looks like a rock star now, and who looks like he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. So you didn't get C.J. Stroud. You traded all those assets to go get Bryce Young. And then after a year and 2 games, Bryce Young is done with in Carolina. So it's a terrible decision now looking back at it, obviously. But I think it's now Bryce Young being the biggest bust in the history of the NFL for number one overall picks, because it wasn't just a one-off. It wasn't just like, oh, we sucked. We had the number one pick because of our own incompetence. We take the quarterback, and he just is not a good quarterback. It was you passed on one guy. That's a factor. And then also you put all the poker chips in the table to go get one poker chip. And you traded a lot of assets, and now after a year and 2 games, it's donezo, it's finished. So, Stu, your Raiders are off the chopping block. I don't know if it makes you feel any better, but your Raiders are no longer viewed as the team that drafted the biggest bust in the history of the NFL with the number one overall pick. All righty, it is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network, coming to you live today in Philadelphia. Is Bryce Young the biggest bust in the history of the NFL, and how do you react to the Carolina Panthers benching Bryce Young in year 2 after 2 games? 855-212-4227, 855-212-4227. When we come on back from Philly, the drama Dallas choking Cowboys, they teased you in week 1, but then they have reappeared in week 2. We're coming on back from Philadelphia. Zach Gelb on the Infinity Sports Network. Sports fans, listen up. 1 in 8 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer, and bladder leaks can be a side effect. That's why Depend is teaming up with the Prostate Cancer Foundation to encourage screening, because health is a long game, and it's yours to win. Now, here's the cool part. Through November, Depend is contributing up to $300,000 to prostate cancer research by donating 40 cents for every purchase of shields, guards, and Real Fit products. Void in Mississippi. Learn more at Depend.com.
You're in a 4.5-minute break. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Infinity Sports Network.
All right, it is the Infinity Sports Network live in Philadelphia today. Zach Gelb here with you. We take you all the way up until 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Former Panthers defensive back in Trey Boston is going to join us at 5:20 p.m. Eastern time today as we have to further discuss the stunning news of the day, and that's the Carolina Panthers saying, Bryce Young, bye-bye. You are going to the bench. Bryce Young bench. Insert Andy Dalton. And after basically a year and 2 games, this signifies the end of the Bryce Young era with the Carolina Panthers, even though he's still on the team. But even if they put him on back, under center at quarterback, when you bench a quarterback that was perceived to be your future and you moved up in the draft to go get, and you gave away a bunch of future resources, my oh my, I don't think there's any going back here, even if you do put him on the field where in 2-3 years from now we're talking about this wonderful, great story. Oh, how slow and how ugly of a start it was for Bryce Young, but then he goes on to be one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. So let's get to the Cowboys, by the way. We opened the show the first 20-plus minutes talking about the Panthers since it was the breaking news. But I got to touch on the Cowboys because even I will say this. Outside of Stephen A. Smith, I do believe I'm one of the harshest Dallas Cowboys critics. And it's not necessarily being harsh. It's just being fair, and it's calling a spade a spade. There's a reason why I call the Dallas Cowboys the Drama Dallas Choking Cowboys. Because whenever there is drama, the Cowboys are right behind it. Whenever you think this team can be something, or they have a good week, they follow it up with just a dreadful performance. But even myself can't say that I predicted this one. Because it's one thing, okay, you go up against the Browns in week 1, and you absolutely dominate them. I know the Browns got a victory yesterday up against the Jaguars. I think that speaks more to the incompetence of the Jaguars, who I'm thoroughly disappointed with to start off the season, rather than getting behind the microphone today and really praising the Cleveland Browns. But the Cowboys not only did defeat the Cleveland Browns, they smothered and they bludgeoned the Cleveland Browns. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, you look at the defense, Micah Parsons was unstoppable in that game. So you go from that high, even though it didn't change my outlook on the Cowboys season. I walked into this season saying Dallas will be fine. Dallas will be a 9-win football team, maybe 10 at most, but I had them on the outside looking in of the postseason, but I viewed them as a fringe wild card team. So after one game where they had a lopsided victory up against the Browns, it's not like I'm like, oh, let me craft up a take and tell you how great the Cowboys are going to be. It's just wait. And that's all you need to do with the Dallas Cowboys. You just wait. And I thought we'd have to wait a little bit longer than this because they're going up against a Saints team, which it's not just that I've thought very little of the Saints entering this season. Bobby Hebert, the former Saints quarterback, and also does a radio show in New Orleans, who joined us before the start of the year, he had zero confidence in this offense. He had more confidence in the defense rather than the offense. My buddy David Immerman, who's the guitar player for Avril Lavigne, I was talking to him yesterday. He goes, I couldn't even believe that this team is 2-0 to start off the season. Like the Saints fan, it wasn't just national media. It wasn't just talking heads. The Saints fan had very, very, very low expectations for the Saints entering this season. So here comes Dallas coming off that great week 1 victory in Cleveland, 33-17, where they just destroy the Cleveland Browns. And then they walk right into Jerry's World on their home turf, and the Saints to open up the game. I couldn't believe this because I have I have a bunch of TVs in my apartment. I got one on the wall to my left, another one right in front of me. I have the computer screen up, the iPad, and with the multi-view and Red Zone and Sunday Ticket, I have a bunch of different games on. And when I was watching the Cowboys-Saints game, I go, wow. Even though I shouldn't be surprised, I am surprised because the Saints are crying out loud, even for a Cowboys standard. This was a new low. The Saints, in their first 6 drives of the game on offense, had 6 touchdowns. Like, we talk about the Panthers being an incompetent organization. That's a new level of incompetence by the Dallas Cowboys. Because I don't think the Saints, even though they deserve to be praised, and they're 2-0, I don't think the Saints are this great, wonderful team that now you could definitely pencil them in, winning the NFC South, and go into the playoffs. So that game, I don't want to discredit the Saints, but it tells me more about the Cowboys. And it just shows you why the Cowboys are just such a tease. And it's not like they've been a pathetic organization the last 3 years. This has been a group that has had 3 straight seasons of 12 wins. But all you have to do is just wait. And you just wait and wait and wait and wait. And ultimately, even when you start to think, oh, maybe this is the year. Zach, maybe you're going to end up having to put your foot in your mouth because of what you usually say about the Cowboys. This is the year they're going to prove you wrong. And you know what? One of Marash's friends, or I think he lives in Marash's community. He's a big listener to the network. His name is DJ Tommy D. And DJ Tommy D is a huge Cowboys fan. And he gets on me all the time for what I say about the Cowboys. And it's actually getting tiresome how every year I end up being right. But even this one, I could say, I did not think that Alvin Kamara and Derek Carr were going to look that great up against the Cowboys. So the Cowboys couldn't even give their fans back-to-back weeks of being excited, back-to-back weeks of being delusional. It was the high of week 1, and then down in week 2, it was the pit of misery. What do they used to say? The pit of misery in the Bud Light Dilly Dilly commercials. Like, that is, geez, the ultimate pit of misery. Even if we all overestimated the Saints, or underestimated the Saints, 44-19, Dallas, you lose that game. And don't tell me, it's only one loss. Because, Stu, I don't know about you. It's also timing, too. This upcoming Sunday, 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox, the Cowboys welcome in the Baltimore Ravens. Even though the Ravens are 0-2 to start the season, where they lost because Isaiah Likely couldn't get a foot down and Lamar Jackson couldn't find Zay Flowers in week 1 to the Kansas City Chiefs, the back-to-back defending world champions. And then yesterday, rest in peace to my survivor pool. I had 2 entries. Week 1, I took the Bengals up against my Patriots. All right, survivor entry 2. I ended up taking yesterday I ended up taking the Ravens up against the Raiders. The Raiders, they were down by 10, Stu, with like 6 minutes to go?
Yep.
Or whatever it was. And your Raiders end up coming on back? And they win the game? That was wild. I couldn't believe your Raiders, Stu, yesterday. But before we get to your Raiders, Stu, the Ravens are now 0-2 to start off the year. And they're playing the Dallas Cowboys next week. Doesn't this have Cowboys L written all over it? Where Lamar and Derrick Henry and John Harbaugh, they give a big effort, and the Ravens walk into Dallas, and they have the Cowboys go from 1-0 to then seeing what happened to Dallas yesterday be 1-1, and then the Cowboys start off their season 1-2. That's the way that this probably feels like it plays out. Yourself?
I totally agree. I just think that if you're the Ravens 0-2, especially losing to a team like the Raiders, who, let's be real, I'm happy with the win, but they're not, they didn't lose to like a playoff team or something like that. You lose to the Raiders, that's going to leave a pretty bad taste in your mouth. So I think they're going to come out this weekend with some vengeance.
And not only that, your Raiders, by the way.
I know.
Brock Bowers, he looks pretty damn good to start off the season. Now, no one should be surprised by that because we saw Brock Bowers at Georgia. But when Samter and I met Brock Bowers at the Super Bowl, you see someone on TV all the time and then you see him in person. He looked small in person or smaller in person and didn't look like he was going to be this great player. Just seeing him in shorts and a T-shirt walk around Radio Row. Man, Brock Bowers, that was a big-time performance yesterday, Stu.
He looked great. Minshew kept him in the game. The defenses looked really good through 2 games. Like, they gave up a late touchdown to the Chargers in week 1. But, other than that, I thought Lamar in this offense would put up at least 30 points on this defense. So the defenses look better than I thought. And, yeah, like you said, Bowers, just really impressive. I'm pretty excited for him.
And not only that, you want to know why the Ravens are a lock next week? An absolute lock. I'm not even saying maybe they win. An absolute lock. You have any idea where I'm going?
I don't, actually.
Hot take Hickey, Ryan Hickey yesterday.
Of course.
4:26 p.m. Eastern Time. The Ravens are broken. This isn't a one-off. The principles that made them one of the best team in the league, toughness, physicality, and rushing offense, have dried them up. If there's anything saying Ravens by 1 billion this weekend over the Cowboys, isn't it that when you see that tweet? And D-Cell sent me that. And D-Cell texted me, Tom DiCelestino, the great producer of Bill Ryder, he said, before I even see the spread, I'm hammering the Ravens this upcoming weekend, regardless of who they play, because I want to put my kid through daycare. That's what D-Cell said. So a good job out of D-Cell. And also, the other crazy Hickey tweet I saw yesterday, that was the worst possible half the Colts could have played, and they're only down 10-0. They are winning this game. Zero doubt about it. And last time I checked, the Packers defeated the Indianapolis Colts. Jeez, Anthony Richardson, yikes. Makes one big throw, which was awesome in week 1. And then ever since then, whew, putrid, P.U. Zach Gelb here with you on the Infinity Sports Network. Where's your level of concern with the drama Dallas choking Cowboys? You know what? I can't even say it's at like a 10, Stu, because this is what I expected. Concern means like I'm worried and, it's going against what I thought they were going to be. This is what I thought they were going to be. Some weeks will look really good, and then other weeks you'll be sitting there saying, man, this team just isn't that good. And that's what happens when you assemble a roster that isn't better than the roster that you had the previous year, even with all the flaws that they had in the previous year.
Yeah, and it's why I know you didn't have them in the playoffs. I didn't have them in the playoffs. So it's one thing we could talk about teams like the Ravens and Bengals, teams like that, how worried we are. But yeah, like you said, the Cowboys are a team that are probably around a 500 team that maybe they squeak into the playoffs, but they're not all that great.
All right, this is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We will take a timeout when we come on back as I'm broadcasting to you live today in Philadelphia. We will update you on some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. We get to the news brief next, but first up, we send it back to our New York City headquarters. Standing by with the latest sports flash, here he is, the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
And it's sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Protect your family, your phone, and your furry friends with life, electronic device, and pet health insurance. Panthers head coach Dave Canales said Bryce Young is our quarterback, but not this week. With the team at 0-2 and the former top pick overall struggling, he goes to the bench, and Andy Dalton will start for the Panthers. The Dolphins have signed Tyler Huntley off the Browns practice squad for some quarterback depth. And Vikings receiver Justin Jefferson is only day-to-day with a quad injury, while the Chiefs won't have Isaiah Pacheco for the next month. He's headed to injured reserve with a fractured fibula, while Broncos tackle Mike McGlinchey expected to miss a month with a sprained knee. The Eagles go for their second straight to open the season tonight in Atlanta. That's the final game of Week 2. The Falcons did not get the early return on Kirk Cousins as they were hoping for, as he threw a pair of interceptions in his season opener coming back from an Achilles injury. He was also 15 for 26 for 155 yards. Michigan has made a change at quarterback with Alex Orji set to start against USC. Sidney Crosby and the Penguins agree to a 2-year extension. I'm Rich Ack.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Follow us on Instagram. Our handle is Infinity Sports Network. That's Infinity Sports Network to follow us on Instagram.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
It's time to Ask the Pros, where you, the listener, gets to ask us a question. It's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Simply tweet your question at INF Sportsnet or at Zach Gelb using the hashtag #AskThePros. Be listening later in the show when we might answer your question. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Alrighty, let's start off the news brief with Dave Canales. Well, Dave, why did you bench your quarterback, Bryce Young?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors. We want to play more football. A lot of factors that go into it, for this decision, and ultimately just kind of lands on my shoulders to be able to make the best decision for our group, to give us our best chance to win this week. And we focus on the weeks. We focus on the challenge at hand, and we feel like Andy gives us our best chance to meet the challenge.
So I guess he's not wrong in saying that Andy gives them a better chance to win compared to Bryce Young, but it's not as if it's going to move the needle significantly. And the objective for the Panthers this year wasn't to go win X amount of games. It was to make Bryce Young be competent. And after 2 weeks, you already pulled the rug out underneath him and say, okay, this relationship is fractured beyond repair. Man, it's one of those where you're like, okay, Dave Canales, your team better look decent, because if they don't, then either two things are going to happen. You'll get fired after this year, and you'll be one and done, or your team will respond, and they'll still be bad, and your owner will say, okay, I'll keep you around, and maybe we'll take a quarterback in the 2025 draft. I still think they should trade the pick in 2025, the draft, the number 1 overall pick, and they should use those resources to start to rebuild the team and then punt on a quarterback until 2026 when talking about taking one in the draft. So, one more from Dave Canales. Is this a 1 week benching, or is this a benching for the season for Bryce the Bus?
Right now, we're focused on this week. We're focused on getting Andy ready to play the Raiders, and then we'll just take it like that. We'll attack the Raiders. We'll attack this week.
There's a hope that maybe Bryce sits back, watches, and learns, and then it pays off down the road.
I certainly hope he just shows up every day, works hard, focuses on his job, and continues to push himself.
Is this a weekly decision you're going to have to make, or is Andy the starter just moving forward?
I don't want to get into timelines. I just know Andy gives us our best chance to win right now.
Stu, how long, assuming that Andy Dalton stays healthy? If he gets hurt, they go back to Bryce Young. But if Andy Dalton stays healthy, when do you think is the bare minimum? How many games where Dave Canales goes, okay, this isn't working like I thought it would, so let's just throw Bryce back out there to see if maybe the benching did help him at all? How many games, you think?
I'd say maybe 3 to 4, 4 to 5 maybe.
I think it's got to be more than that.
You think so, yeah?
You're making this drastic of a move.
Yeah.
If in 3 to 4 weeks you're like, oh, just kidding, I don't think that's a good look. So they have the Raiders on Sunday. Then they have the Bengals, the Bears, the Falcons, the Commanders, and the Broncos, and the Saints and the Giants. You know what? I think you say we make this decision for all of October, and then midway through November. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games that will go by. If Andy Dalton looks like the way that we think Andy Dalton will look, then okay, out of the bye, you'll allow Bryce Young. But guess who they play coming out of the bye? The Chiefs.
Oh.
You know what? I think this is it for Bryce. I don't think Bryce Young starts another game this year. Because even if it gets as bad as I think it will, and okay, maybe the last 2-3 games of the season, but imagine if you bench him for all that time, for 8 weeks, and then coming out of the bye, their schedule picks up in intensity. You got the Chiefs, the Bucks, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Cardinals, the Bucks, the Falcons. It's okay. That's why they should have kept on playing him. I'm not saying that these are all easy wins, because there's no easy win for the Panthers. I don't know if there's even a win. Maybe the Giants are their best bet. At least let them navigate these tough waters. And then, okay, if you think it's not good enough, then, okay, you say, all right, this is over, this isn't working, you go to Andy. But this is Canales truly thinking that Andy Dalton gives them a better chance to win. So if you have these, I'm not going to say games that are likely to win, but winnable games, then you got to go make this move now, even though I don't get why Dave Canales is hired if you're making this move after 2 weeks into the season. I've never seen this before. I've never seen this next audio clip before in terms of what happened. We've obviously have seen players throw up on a football field. I always think of the replacements when the offensive lineman ate too many eggs before the game and then he pukes and they all do the shuffle together. But I've never seen an offensive lineman, the center, throw up on the football and then snap the football. That happened in the Packers game yesterday. They didn't come back to bite them on 3rd down, even though they didn't get the conversion. But Malik Willis didn't throw the football because there was vomit on it after fielding a snap. This is the Packers coach, Matt LaFleur, on it.
I asked Malik why he didn't throw the ball on that 3rd down, and he told me that Josh threw up on the ball. I was like, that's the first time I've ever heard that. Matter of fact, the official came over to me, Sean came over to me and said, we saw your center thrown up on the ball. Do you want us to take him out next time? I said, absolutely. Please do that, because, you're talking about a critical situation, and it's 3rd down, and I've never had a throw with vomit on a football. So I don't know. I don't think Malik probably didn't appreciate that.
Stu, maybe I'm an idiot here. Don't get me wrong, it's disgusting. But Malik Willis is already holding the football. Throw up was on the ball. It gets snapped to him. He's holding it. Why not just throw the football? It's not like you can't throw the football if there's some vomit on it. And I don't think this is like, oh, let's just be sanitary and not have to throw that football to another teammate who's then going to have to catch a football with vomit on it. This makes no sense to me, this entire thing.
I believe he said it after the game. I believe Willis said something about he was worried about the ball being too slick and, misthrowing it and leading to an interception maybe. I don't know.
Like the vomit dripping down his fingers and then the ball sliding right out of his hand. I would smack my center in the head if you throw up on the football and then snap it to me. That's disgusting. Here is Trevor Lawrence on the state of the Jaguars offense.
Trevor, how stunned are you by the offensive performance in the last 6 quarters?
Yeah, we suck right now, so I don't. Pretty shocked. Obviously we had a great offseason, great training camp, and we got to figure it out.
They're the team I'm most disappointed with in the first 2 weeks of the season. I get it, the Ravens are 0-2. I get the Bengals are 0-2. This Jacksonville team, to choke away week 1 up against the Dolphins when you basically had that game won, and then you're going up a Browns team against a Cleveland Browns team that basically did nothing on offense, and your franchise quarterback, and I know both quarterbacks are paid way too much money, Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson, but that offense couldn't do anything. I get it, the Browns have a good defense, but to start the year off 0-2 and how they have lost these games, yeah, you could press that big fat red panic button on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm really worried about the state of the Jaguars. Let's go to Dan Campbell. This was right at halftime. He takes the blame for the clock management issue. They had too many men on the field when trying to spike the ball and then eventually get the field goal unit out. Fox.
Listen, 100% on the head coach here, all right? Totally screwed my team. That is mine. We're going for the clock. Clock it. It's not a hurricane. And I made a decision that I shouldn't have made, and our team's going to have to overcome it. That's the bottom line.
And this was Dan Campbell about the same decision after the game.
You know, I asked for improvement from last week, was the story. And we did improve. We did improve. And their coach cost them. Their head coach cost them this one. So, critical error into half, 100% on me. We improved. There's areas we got to continue to improve on, but it's not okay.
And I'm really impressed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They continuously get disrespected. I know the story is more so the Lions losing yesterday, but that's a heck of a job, by the way, by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Todd Bowles, even though most of the story is going to be talking about the Detroit Lions. You want to know how bad it is for Florida State? Not only they're 0-3, where they've lost to Georgia Tech, Boston College, and this past weekend Mike Norvell lost to his former squad, where he used to be the head coach in Memphis. They can't even do the press conference right. Listen up to this press conference after another loss for Florida State. They're 0-3, and hear what happens when Mike Norvell is speaking to the media.
I tell it to teams all the time, momentum takes one play. I mean, that's it. That's all it takes to change it. And, we just, obviously have had some opportunities that, that we've needed to respond in those situations. But I think from their attitude, their approach, even there in the locker room, we're all disappointed. As we continue to work and continue to pour into each other and the opportunity we have.
Attention, warning, your program is a disaster. Please leave the building. Jeez Louise, they can't even do the press conference correctly. That's wild. That's a Curb Your Enthusiasm type of moment. And finally, here is Brian Callahan on his message to Will Levis after another bad turnover.
I think the camera caught it pretty clear, if I had to guess. So, I was upset. It was dumb. It was the same exact thing he did last week, and he cost us points in the red zone. And that is what it is. He's a grown-up, and he knows better. And so, I was really irritated that he cost us 3 points in a game that we probably needed it.
And what the Titans are doing is they're trying to put Will Levis in a position to succeed. They've surrounded him with enough to see if he could swim. And so far, he's sinking through the first 2 weeks of the season. And his coach, back-to-back weeks, getting annoyed with the quarterback terrible decision. And who would have thought Bryce Young, though, would have been the guy to be benched before Mayo Boy and Will Levis. Coming on back, it is the Zach Gelb Show.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Alrighty, hour number 2 of our radio program. That's right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. I come to you live today from Philadelphia, where I'll be making my way after the show to Lincoln Financial Field. I'll do a little tailgating. If you're around, make sure you say hello. I will be at the Amorosa tailgate with the Amorosa Rolls, obviously. That great family. So I'll be checking out that tailgate. Then I'll be going into the stadium with a buddy of mine, and I'll be checking out a little Philadelphia Eagles up against the Atlanta Falcons to wrap up Week 2, Monday Night Football. Tomorrow I'm back in New York. I'm going to the Mets-Nationals game at Citi Field. Wednesday I'm just taking it easy, and then Thursday I'm going to MetLife Stadium to check out my New England Patriots, who lost yesterday, but they are 1-1 after beating the Bengals in Week 1 and then losing in Week 2 in overtime to the Seattle Seahawks. And they'll be going up against the New York Jets, as the Jets yesterday, they got a win up against the Tennessee Titans. And Stu, before we get to the big game from yesterday, which was the Bengals and the Chiefs, where are you at with the Jets through 2 weeks of the season? Because I look at their team. They suffered another injury in the defensive line, or on the front seven with Johnson with the Achilles injury. And not only that, The offense, you're starting to see some signs. You saw them in week 1. In week 2, the offensive line did not play great. Breece Hall, we all know, is a heck of a player, and he made a great catch in the right corner of the end zone. It was, I believe, a one-handed snag. But defensively, this team is concerning. Like, there were times in the games yesterday where if Will Levis wasn't the quarterback, then Tennessee probably gets that victory, and he had another inexcusable turnover, and they were able to move the ball, and Tennessee was able to be able to have a spot and a chance to go either tie or win the game at many different points. But this Jets defense, like, I look at it for being very comfortable where my football team is at, knowing what my football team is in the Patriots. Like, I walk into Thursday night knowing that the Patriots, even with their garbage offensive line that could only run block, they can't pass protect to save their life. If they could have pass protect yesterday, they would have been 2-0 and they would have beat the Seattle Seahawks. But I look at this Patriot team coming on in up against the Jets on Thursday, not that that's like the biggest story, where I feel like the Patriots are going to be able to run the ball with Gibson and Stevenson on the ground up against the Jets. Like, my biggest concern through the first 2 weeks of the season with the Jets, the defense is clearly overrated. Like, last week the take was, this defense is just good, not great. Through 2 weeks, I can't even call this defense good with their playing. And this coach in Robert Saleh, he doesn't know the difference between his elbow and his ass. Like, yesterday, I'm sorry, I know that sounds harsh. I hear him talking to his team yesterday in the locker room, and he's saying, that's not just a good win, that's a great win. Bro, you're the Jets. I get it, that usually has a negative connotation, but you are a team that has a good roster going up against a team that stinks in the Tennessee Titans, and you barely beat them. Some could even say you got lucky to win that game, and you have the audacity to go in front of your team after the game and basically be a cheerleader and pat them on the behind and say, oh, that's not just a good win, gentlemen, that's a great win. Like, give me a break. The Jets for the first 2 weeks, if I had to say on a scale of 1 to 10 where my concern level is at, I think it's a 7. And that seems pretty high, but offensively, the line still has problems. You know what Breece Hall is. You know what Aaron Rodgers is. You know what Garrett Wilson is. Check, 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 check. And I think those three guys as a trio are going to have a big season. But defensively, Sauce Gardner, man, all Jet fans want to do is tell me this guy's the best cornerback in football. My ass with how Sauce Gardner's playing through the first 2 weeks of the season. Yeah. So, Stu, this is just, like, where are you at with the Jets? Let me ask you that.
I mean, so I agree with you. It has not looked as good, especially defensively, as I thought it would. At least I was more concerned with the offense going in, just, having a aging quarterback and some question
Achilles.
marks. Yeah. So, but the one saving grace might be the Dolphins with a Tua injury are probably now going to be a non-factor. The Browns, I think, are a lot worse than I thought they would be. The Colts and Jaguars. So I guess my point is, if you look at the AFC as a whole, it's still a very good conference. It's still going to be very tough to make the playoffs. But there are some teams that I had pegged in front of them that I think are, at the very least, on their level, if not worse.
Yeah, and the Jets schedule, I understand right out of the gate, you had the San Francisco 49ers. But even then, the San Francisco 49ers, they embarrassed you in that football game. And then the Niners, once again, lose to the Minnesota Vikings. And the Vikings win yesterday. So what does that say about the San Francisco 49ers? The nice thing for the Jets is, okay, you have New England on Thursday. Even though I think New England can run the football, that should be a win for the Jets. And then you play the Broncos on Sunday, and the Broncos offense is offensive. So they should be 3-1. They should be. But then after that, like, you play Minnesota, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, New England, Houston, Arizona, Indianapolis, Seattle, Miami, Jacksonville, the Rams, Buffalo, Miami. So there's like no game on that schedule where I'm not saying I'm picking them to beat the Texans or I'm picking them to beat the Bills twice, but there's really no game that you can't win. So the schedule does ease up. But for a team that defense is supposed to be, right, this team's bread and butter, I think that's a problem with how bad the defense has been through the first 2 weeks of the season. Alrighty, let's do this because, Stu, you bring up a good point. You talk about the AFC and how already there's been some surprises. Jaguars 0-2. PU. Ravens 0-2. But you know what's not a crazy statement, Stu? And just tell me if you agree or disagree with this statement, and then we'll get into it. When you look at the Bengals in terms of dethroning the Kansas City Chiefs, even though the Bengals are 0-2 to start the season, would you still agree that the Bengals are the team you have the most confidence in the AFC to take down the Chiefs and prevent the Chiefs from going to another Super Bowl?
100%. They're the ones.
Yeah, and I'm with you too. So I look back at that game yesterday. Chiefs and Bengals, it always delivers. That was a really fun game. Here are my two biggest problems from the game. Number one, what the heck is Jamar Chase doing? Jamar Chase, you need to be locked in. I understand you're upset. You don't got a new contract. That's on the Bengals. You're not negotiating with the Bengals in season. That was the report that came out before the game. So I understand that Jamar Chase is going to be on edge. But down the stretch, you are trying to win the game up against a team that you ran your mouth against, about before the game. And you're going up against that team, and you know how razor thin the margin of error is. And you have to do everything in your willpower to basically not be a jackass and not be a fool and not be the reason why you potentially cost your team. And he's upset with the official. At first, we thought it was a face mask. It was actually the right call of no face mask. And here we are now in the NFL, where you have a player employing the referee to call a hip drop tackle, which is a penalty. So the referee gives him some rope at first, allows him to voice his frustration. The referee is walking away. He turns around, says something to Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow, who is as close could be to Jamar Chase, is begging his receiver and like his best friend to shut the bleep up. And Jamar Chase keeps on running his mouth, and the official says, you know what, I had enough. I'm throwing a flag, 15 yards on sportsmanlike conduct. Mistakes like that in that game, knowing who the other opponent is, and the opponent is on the sideline, it just can't happen. And Jamar Chase to then afterwards be selfish. And that's what he was yesterday. He was selfish. He's on the sideline throwing his helmet. He's complaining about what occurred. You look like a dummy on the football field yesterday. That's what you look like. You looked like a dummy. And you did something that you shouldn't have done. So that was number one. Now, as upset as I was about the decision of Jamar Chase to lose his cool in that spot, here's something I can't stand. The NFL is rigged crowd. And the NFL only gives the calls to the Kansas City Chiefs. Just stop. I understand the Chiefs are the team to beat. I understand the Chiefs are the new villain in the NFL. I get it. People already are sick and tired of the Chiefs winning. But what else was the official supposed to do yesterday? Because on that same drive, he did give a call to the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Which was a legitimate call when there was hands to the face. And it was 100% the right call. So on 4th down, and it's 4th and 16, this just shows you how great the Chiefs are. And it's not with how the play played out, but I just felt like Mahomes was going to convert. And the Bengals had a kick-ass defensive game plan. Lou Anarumo once again made Patrick Mahomes make mistake after mistake, and they were on the verge of getting the victory, being 1-1, and the defense being the story. The defense being the reason why they defeat the Kansas City Chiefs. And then on 4th and 16, on a ball that was not going to get caught, but it was a legit and the right call, you have a defensive player push the receiver, and it's defensive pass interference. Now, I see people saying, when do they ever call that? Oh, it's a terrible call. Oh, the NFL is rigged for the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift and Andy Reid. Nonsense. Nonsense. And you guys know me. I tell you when I like a call. I tell you when I hate a call. That call was legitimate. So can we stop for a second in this hogwash that the Chiefs get all the calls? The officiating was not a story yesterday. The only reason the officiating is a story is because you have just dumb people right now because they lost bets or whatever transpired that they are upset that Kansas City won. But here's the scary part with Kansas City. And this has now been an issue for over a year. They're not even playing at their best, and they're still better than all the rest. The Kansas City Chiefs, they got outgained in yards yesterday. They didn't win the time of possession battle, and they lost the turnover battle. And the Bengals, after having more yards, winning the turnover battle, and winning the time of possession battle, and Mahomes having a very pedestrian stat line and having 2 interceptions, Bengals still lost the game. It just shows you how you almost have to be perfect to defeat the Kansas City Chiefs. But after 2 weeks, I would say the 3 teams in just the AFC that I would have the most amount of confidence in to knock out the Kansas City Chiefs, and I don't have confidence in any of them, let's be real. But the team I have the most confidence in, even sitting at 0-2, are the Cincinnati Bengals. Because the Bengals have done something that no other team has done before, and that's beat the Chiefs when it matters. You know, I know the Bucks and the Patriots beat the Chiefs, but that was Tom Brady-led teams. Tom Brady's no longer in the league, so you kind of toss them out of the equation. And the Bengals, yes, they lose yesterday, but they're going to be fine. They have the Commanders coming up on Monday night, and then they have the Carolina Panthers. They got the Ravens, and then the Giants. Even if they lose that Ravens game, they're going to start the year off 3-3. Because they'll beat the Commanders, they'll beat the Panthers, who knows about the Ravens, and then they'll beat the Giants. So at worst, this team is starting off 3-3. Now, you just hope a loss like yesterday or a loss like to the Patriots doesn't come back to screw them at the end of the year if they need one more win and then they lose out on a tiebreaker. But as long as they get in, they're the team that I have the most confidence in the AFC to beat Mahomes because they don't fear Mahomes. Like, they lost yesterday, but Mahomes looked vulnerable. And you want to give me 2 other teams, or I'll give you 2 other teams. I know it wasn't pretty up against the Bears, and they couldn't finish drives, but the Texans have an it factor with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter and Stingley on the defensive side of the ball, and then offensively, they have a heck of a trio at wide receiver. Joe Mixon looked like he survived the injury scare last night and did return to the game. And then you have C.J. Stroud as well, who has the ultimate it factor when you see what he's been able to do for the Texans organization. And then I'll give you one more. It's the Bills because, right, inevitably, maybe Josh Allen has his Peyton Manning moment where you finally beat Mahomes, just like when Manning did beat Brady all those years ago. But this Chiefs team, it's weird to say it, the way I talked about the Eagles last year, and I know it had a horrific finish for the Eagles, where when they were 10-1, I'm like, wow, the Eagles aren't even playing at their best. Just wait till what happens when they do play at their best, and it never happened. But the Chiefs just won a Super Bowl last year with Mahomes basically being a game manager, his words, not mine, the defense dominating, and you thought they could find a different gear. And even though they never found that different gear on offense last year, it was still better than every team that they played. And it was still good enough to go win a Super Bowl, and then they're back-to-back Super Bowl champions going for a three-peat. Like, this is the crazy part right now, Stu. Even with the Isaiah Pacheco injury, as he's going to undergo surgery on a fractured fibula, and according to Ian Rappaport, he'll miss at least 6 weeks. Even with the Pacheco injury, if I said to you right now, Chiefs are the field to go win the Super Bowl this year, and I put a gun to your head, Stu, would you take the Chiefs or would you take the field?
I would still take the Chiefs. Until they actually lose or give me a reason to think like they're going to lose. Like, the Pacheco injury is a loss. There's no doubt about that. That's a big loss. But at the same time, Mahomes has showed that he could still overcome not having the best weapons around him and still win a Super Bowl. And until that doesn't happen, or until Mahomes himself, gets dinged up or hurt, I have a very tough time not picking the Chiefs.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. And you know what? I don't use this, and I don't say this in a prideful way. I don't. It's the Patriots all over again. This is what it is. And that pains me to say that, because what I had for 20 years was so special, and I'm selfish. I don't want anyone else to taste that success for that long. But even when it's ugly and sloppy, They just find a way. And that's the bottom line with Kansas City. And the bigger point here is we could talk inside the AFC and say, okay, just for this year, right, it's the Bengals, it's the Texans, and it's the Bills. But long term, if we really want to see this team not continue their dominance in Kansas City, we need the Chargers and Harbaugh and Herbert to be great. And I know it's a 2-0 start. We're not going to get delirious after you beat the Raiders. Sorry, Stu. And then also you beat the Carolina Panthers. But the Chargers being 2-0, not that it gives me hope the Chargers are going to be some great team this year, but they need to find a way to just take the baton some years from the Kansas City Chiefs in their own division. Because the Patriots for 20 years, even though they were better than all the rest, inside the division, the Bills never got their act together consistently. The Jets never got their act together consistently. The Dolphins never got their act together consistently. I can't trust the Raiders to do so even after their big win up against the Ravens. I can't trust the Broncos. You want to talk about an overrated coach. Man, Sean Payton, he's kind of like Dave Canales. You take a job, and it's a little bit different because Canales take any job he could get. Sean Payton could be selective. But Sean didn't want Russell Wilson as his quarterback. He didn't. He didn't want him as his quarterback and then gave up on him very early on in that season. And you look at Dave Canales, we thought he was going to try to fix Bryce Young. After 2 weeks, he gives up on him. But with the Broncos and the Raiders inside the AFC West being very far away from getting their damn act together, we need Harbaugh to be Harbaugh, Herbert to be Herbert. You got the bookends at tackles with Slater and Alt. And we need them to just maybe win the AFC West like every third year. So it's not just Mahomes, where they're winning their division, they're getting a home playoff game, and then in other years, I know it didn't happen last year, but getting the number one overall seed and getting a bye and then missing out and having to play a wild card weekend. So I need the Chargers long term to be great. Who's the team in the AFC? Forget the NFC. The team in the AFC that has the best chance of preventing the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl. 855-212-4227, 855-212-4227. Even after their loss yesterday, I still think it's the Cincinnati Bengals because they've done it before. We'll take a timeout. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. When we come on back, I'll give you my 5 biggest takeaways from a crazy weekend in college football. But first, football is back, and what better way to celebrate than winning some cash with Sleeper Picks? Sleeper Picks is a fantasy game, but you could win real money. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If your picks are right, you win. You can pick up to 8 players to win up to 100 times your money. And Sleeper has a couple huge offers to kickstart the football season. For new users, Sleeper will match your first deposit with up to $100 credit to your account. If you already played, Sleeper's got discounted player projections for you every week of the season. So download the Sleeper app now and use promo code SCORE, and your first deposit will be doubled with a credit up to $100. What are you waiting for? Download Sleeper today and use code SCORE, that's SCORE, for a credit up to $100 match on your first deposit. That's code SCORE. Must be 18 years in most states and in state where it is legal. Promo code and other restrictions apply. Visit sleeper.com. Please wager responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-426-2537 for help. Paid for by Blitz Studios.
You're in a 4-minute break. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Infinity Sports Network.
Alrighty, I know we're doing a lot of NFL today after what was a very busy football Sunday across the USA, and then we had the big news today that the Panthers, and I'm not talking about the Pitt Panthers, we'll get to them in just a second, but the Carolina Panthers are benching Bryce Young. So let's give you 5 college football takeaways from this past weekend in college football. Let me start off with the backyard brawl. It always delivers. That could be such an underrated rivalry. I feel like when we talk about rivalries in college football, we'll obviously talk about Army-Navy, you talk about Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Auburn, and there's a bunch of others as well. Anytime I watch the backyard brawl, that is a physical football game. Even if Pitt and West Virginia aren't the two best teams, you never know what's going to happen. And I thought West Virginia was going to win the game because West Virginia, right, they needed that game. You lose to Penn State, that's one thing, but you got embarrassed by Penn State, and then you're sitting there at 1-1 after 2 weeks, and you're going up against a Pitt team that had that crazy comeback up against Cincinnati the week prior. That's a game with the talent that West Virginia has, the way that they're built in the trenches, who their quarterback is, what they got in the backfield. They got to win that game. But for them to be up with a little over 3 minutes to go, 34-24, and to not win that game, that was crazy. And the touchdown by the receiver to make it 34-31 was awesome. And then Pitt gets the ball back after West Virginia goes 3 and out, and they put it in the end zone to make it 38-34, and that was the final score. And the quarterback for Pitt, what a story that is, Eli Stein, 21-30 for 301 yards and 3 touchdowns, also was the team's leading rusher with 59 yards as well. But think about that. Pitt comes back from down 10 points with a little over 3 minutes to go, and they're really the comeback kids because the week prior, that was a game where Pitt was up against Cincinnati, and they were down 27-6, and they completed that comeback. They were down 27-6 with the third quarter basically ticking away, and then Pitt gets a touchdown, and they end up beating Cincinnati 28-27. So that's the first takeaway, is the backyard brawl. It always deliver. Next takeaway. I said this before the year started. Arch Manning has a chance to play and has a chance to start games for Texas this year, even though Texas, to me, is a bona fide national championship contender. So, the reason I said that is because of past history. Quinn Ewers has been sensational at Texas. Quinn Ewers, along with Sark, has brought Texas back. Quinn Ewers last year was in a college football playoff game. But what I was intrigued by was this. Last year, when Quinn Ewers got hurt, who was the backup? It was Malik Murphy. Malik Murphy is now at Duke with my BFF Manny Diaz, and the backup is now Arch Manning, who we've seen so far at times because Texas is blowing everybody out through the first 2 weeks of the season. We've seen Arch get in garbage time. But also, when you look at Quinn Ewers, his first 2 years at Texas, he's been hurt. In 2022 is that game against Alabama where he missed 3 games because of a sprained SC joint. That was the game where Drew Brees goes to Instagram and is like, get him back out there for the second half when he took a big hit. And then in 2022-3, he missed 2 games with an AC joint sprain. So that's 5 games missed in 2 years, and now he has a strained abdomen, and I saw what Texas said. They expect him to miss 1 game and then probably be back. But here's why this is intriguing. Because Quinn Ewers has been everything and then some at Texas. But he's not Arch Manning. And you know where the hype train is with Arch Manning. Don't get me wrong. I still think that this is Quinn Ewers' team. I still think Quinn Ewers, as long as he's healthy, is going to be the starting quarterback. But when they play Louisiana Monroe and Arch Manning lights it up, assuming he does so, that's going to lead to a moment where it gives fans a little taste. And also, on Saturday up against UTSA, he went 9-12 for 223 yards, 4 passing touchdowns. And also, I've never seen Eli or Peyton do this. He had a 67-yard rushing touchdown in Arch Manning, where he looked quick. So I still think this is Quinn Ewers' team. And as long as Quinn just misses 1 game, when he's healthy and he's back, he's going to be the guy. But if there's ever a moment where Quinn struggles or Quinn gets hurt again, you're going to feel pretty damn confident about Arch Manning. And there's also going to be part of it, and it's probably not fair to say, because Quinn doesn't deserve to get benched. But like selfishly, I kind of want to see Arch play over Quinn, even though Quinn is right on the cusp of being an early pick in the first round of this upcoming NFL draft. So the Quinn Ewers injury history is a factor. And now this is a 3rd straight year at Texas where he's having to deal with that. Alrighty. Here's a coach like Stu. I don't know how much you watch the Kentucky-Georgia game, but if let me just, without any context, if I would have just said to you on Friday when we were doing the show that Kentucky would have lost to Georgia by 1 point, what would you have said to me? What would your response be?
I would have said, Zach, you're crazy.
Right? And you probably would not think I would be slamming the head football coach of Kentucky for giving a valiant effort up against Georgia and nearly taking Georgia down for the first time in a while in the regular season, right? Like, you wouldn't think there's a possible way when you lose the game by 1 point and you are Kentucky, which is a basketball school, which John Calipari's no longer there, so no one could, so Mark Stoops, I don't care if you're feeling get upset for the truth that Cal was saying, you cannot actually believe that I would have been ripping right Mark Stoops for losing by a point to Georgia, correct, Amundo?
That's right. It'd be only praise for Mark Stoops and the program.
And I like Mark Stoops a lot. I know he got embarrassed last week by South Carolina. That's why it makes no sense how he could even be competitive and almost beat Georgia. But you are Kentucky football. And I don't want that to come off disrespectfully. But Mark Stoops, you've done everything you can at Kentucky. You have put players in the NFL. You had Josh Allen go very early in the draft, too, the defensive end who does a great job with the Jacksonville Jaguars. You've had 2 10-win seasons at Kentucky. When you have the ball with the number one team on the country, in the country on the ropes, you can't be playing a putty cat style of football. And that's what happened. I get it. You're probably not converting 4th and 8, but it's 4th and 8 at Georgia's 47. You got to go for it. You got to go for it. You cannot punt the football back with 3 minutes. With 3 minutes to go, you cannot punt the football back and anticipate that you're going to get the ball back against Georgia, a team that you had on the ropes with any significant amount of time to go do something. And him punting that ball on 4th and 8 at the 47, it takes all the good work and all the praise I was about to give Mark Stoops, and you could open the window and let all that praise go right out the window. In that spot, you literally have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose. You're already losing in the game. It's not like you had a lead, and you're like, okay, I'll trust my defense to protect the lead. You are down by 1 point at the time. For crying out loud. All you need to do in that spot is go for it. And if you get it, great. If you don't get it, I live with the results. But not going for it in that spot on a day that would have been all praise for Mark Stoops, even if you lost. Oh, what a good job by Mark Stoops. It was embarrassing, it was pathetic, and it just shows you why a program like Kentucky, even when they have a good day up against Georgia, it's a day that ends up in embarrassment. Because that just takes all the good energy you had in that game, and it goes right out the window. Bad decision by Mark Stoops. 2, you want to talk about maybe the luckiest coach in the country? Brian Kelly with the LSU family. I'm going to call them Lucky State University. How they won that game against South Carolina is beyond me. Nussmeier was trying to throw the game away. Anytime he threw a pick six, it would get called back for a penalty. The second one was a joke. I get it. The hit looks unnecessary. I get it. It's on a quarterback. But the quarterback becomes a runner after throwing the interception. He becomes a defender. And the player that hit Nussmeier, it wasn't a vicious hit. It wasn't a lethal hit. He was making a block. And also, they called OPI at one point on South Carolina. The referees couldn't even get the player right, and I have no clue if it was even actually OPI or not, and that negated a big play. That's a bad loss for South Carolina because they were up 17-0, and Shane Beamer couldn't slam the door shut. But if I was a South Carolina fan, I feel robbed. And LSU, don't be parading around like you actually did something, taking down South Carolina and snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. Because your football team, no good this year. Your football team, you lose week 1, and your coach gets in front of the podium and acts like a buffoon where he's slamming the desk, the podium desk, and it's a bunch of fake outrage. And then you win this game, and I'm supposed to throw you a parade? Hey, it's supposed to be like Mardi Gras. We're going to get a float and genuflect to Brian Kelly. Give me a break. They got lucky. They got lucky to win the game. And then finally, oh boy, Billy Napier. We already knew he was done at Florida. When you get blown out to start out the season in the swamp up against Miami, it wasn't a matter of if Billy Napier was going to get fired. It was just when Billy Napier is going to get fired. I am still surprised today that Billy Napier still has his job. Because beating Samford 45-7 doesn't mean all of a sudden Billy Napier's job is saved. But Billy Napier going up against A&M, another game in the swamp, and Billy Napier, where you find out before the game Connor Wigman's not going to start for A&M, and Marcel Reed is making his first true start in college football, and he just destroys your defense. I'm sorry. Billy Napier, how you still have a job right now, how the boosters at Florida in the swamp have not fired your ass yet. I don't understand that. Pay him the buyout, get him out. He was cooked after Miami. He's even more cooked right now. How they lose that game, or screw that, not even lose the game. How they're not even able to compete and they get blown out and the final score doesn't even do it justice. They lost the game 33-20. It felt worse than that. Billy Napier, you're done. You were done after week 1, but now you're really done. Because 2 out of your first 3 games in the season, you were non-competitive against Miami, and then you were non-competitive against A&M when they're starting a quarterback for the first time, A&M. And A&M we know is overrated. They showed that week 1 against Notre Dame, how A&M is really no good this year. But what a brutal performance. And why are you still starting Graham Mertz? Not that it would have made a difference, not that all of a sudden Florida would have won that game, but there is no benefit, Billy Napier, to starting Graham Mertz. He's the guy. You know what Billy Napier is? He is the dog in the house on the meme that you see all the time on social media with the fire around him. He's like, oh, nothing to see here, everything's fine. You keep on showing your loyalties and running out the same crap each and every week. And I know eventually Lagway gets in the game, but geez Louise, why would you start Graham Mertz? I don't understand it. That's a dead man. Billy Napier was a dead man walking after week 1. How Florida, if Florida has any guts, if Florida's an actual football program, he's not coaching in their next game. And I'm kind of surprised we haven't got that breaking news yet. Breaking news, Billy Napier has been fired. Please, put him out of his misery. Get him out, give him his buyout, and go let him sit on his money, because he should not be coaching Florida. Zach Gelb, right here on the Infinity Sports Network. This is Zach Gelb Show. We'll take a time out. We'll come on back a little onside, offside. Let's send it back to our New York City headquarters, and we will get the latest sports update with the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Well, the Panthers are 0-2. Bryce Young is 2-16 as a starter. So to try to jumpstart his team, head coach Dave Canales made a change and is going with Andy Dalton as the starter this weekend.
It just kind of lands on my shoulders to be able to make the best decision for our group, to give us our best chance to win this week. And we focus on the weeks. We focus on the challenge at hand, and we feel like Andy gives us our best chance.
The Vikings' Justin Jefferson is day-to-day with a quad injury, while the Chiefs will be without Isaiah Pacheco for 6 to 8 weeks due to a fractured fibula. And the Dolphins have signed quarterback Tyler Huntley off the Ravens practice squad with Tua Tagovailoa dealing with another concussion. And the Broncos expect to be without tackle Mike McGlinchey for the next month due to a sprained knee. Week 2 comes to an end tonight with the Eagles and Falcons in Atlanta. It's the first game stateside for Philly after the season-opening win in Brazil, led by Saquon Barkley, who had 3 touchdowns in that victory. Kirk Cousins will try to shake off a disappointing Falcons debut tonight. Sidney Crosby and the Penguins come to terms on a 2-year extension with an annual cap hit of $8.7 million a year, the same as his number. I'm Rich Ackerman.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is, play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Zach's taking on the most polarizing issues in sports. Which side of the line of scrimmage will he end up on?
Offside. Defense number 69.
It's Onsides, Offsides with Zach Gelb.
All right, it is a Monday edition of the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. I come to you live today in the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia. I already got a tasty cake. I'm hoping the Amorosa family's making cheesesteaks on their great rolls at the tailgate that I'm going to tonight for Eagles and Falcons, because I usually have to get a cheesesteak when I'm in town. And I'm hoping there's a good Philly soft pretzel as well that I could get. So I got 3 things on the bucket list today, even though I've already had all those things. And you say bucket list, it's like usually things you haven't accomplished or ever had in life. But I already got the tasty cake since I'm broadcasting from WIP, and they have a whole wall dedicated to tasty cakes, which are absolutely delicious. I had the crumb cake style tasty cake. I forget what the exact name is, but it was phenomenal during the break. Alrighty, Stu, you got some questions for me. I'll give you some answers. Trey Boston's going to join us, the former Panthers defensive back. That will come your way at 5:20 p.m. Eastern when he'll join us live with Bryce Young getting benched today. And now it's the Andy Dandy Red Rifle Dalton era picking back up in Charlotte, North Carolina. Stu, what do you got for onside offside?
All right, Zach, the Saints are out of the gate fast in 2024, starting the season 0-2 and averaging 45.5 points per game while outscoring their opponents 91-25. Derek Carr has thrown 5 touchdowns while Alvin Kamara has hit the end zone 5 times himself. Onsides, offsides, the Saints are the best team in the NFC South.
Yeah, I'm going offside. No offense to the Saints they've been remarkable to start off the season. They smothered, obviously, the Carolina Panthers right out of the gate. And then we know that they just eviscerated or emasculated the drama Dallas Cowboys yesterday. But with that being said, I still look at this NFC South. Falcons, I think, will lose tonight to the Eagles, so they'll start off the year 0-2. We know the Panthers are terrible, so I'm not dismissing the Falcons on the season, but right now it seems like it's a race between the Saints and the Bucs. And the Bucs won the division last year. The Bucs just defeated the Detroit Lions, which I think is a better win than the Saints, even though it was a blowout victory, taking care of the Dallas Cowboys. So when you say that the Saints are the best team in the NFC South, I can't go there right now because I still think it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with what I've seen through the first 2 weeks of the season.
Offside. All right, the Vikings are 2-0, and former third overall pick Sam Darnold has been a revelation, throwing for nearly 500 yards, 4 touchdowns to just 2 picks, including a highlight reel 97-yard scoring strike to Justin Jefferson yesterday. Onside, offsides, the 27-year-old Darnold can resurrect his career and become a consistent Pro Bowl caliber starter.
Well, Tyler Huntley, who I saw just signed on the practice squad of the Miami Dolphins, he's a Pro Bowler before. He's made the Pro Bowl once, and he barely even played. So the bar isn't high to make the Pro Bowl, but a consistent Pro Bowl caliber starter, I'm going offside because inevitably J.J. McCarthy is going to see the field in Minnesota. I know it's not going to happen this year because he's out for the season with the injury, but eventually they're going to put the guy under center who was a top 10, top 15 pick in the draft. So if Darnold goes elsewhere, is he going to have success? I haven't seen him have success anywhere outside of really this 2-game stint in Minneapolis. So let's see where we are at the end of the year. Let's see what the Vikings are at the end of the season before we start talking about a consistent Pro Bowl caliber starting quarterback.
Offside. All right, as we discussed to start the show, Bryce Young has been an embarrassment for the Panthers since they made the ill-fated trade to draft him first overall, and now the team has benched him in favor of Andy Dalton. So onsides, offsides, assuming the Panthers land another top 3 pick, they will draft another quarterback to replace Young.
Is this what I think they should do or what they will do?
What they will do.
Oh, boy.
I know,
think
hard
they
to trust
should.
Tepper.
Yeah, I can't trust Tepper. I think they should trade the pick. I've made that clear. You trade the number 1 overall pick, you get a bunch of resources, there's no generational quarterback in this draft class, and then in 2026 you end up taking a quarterback when you rebuild up some of the roster with all the picks that you got. But I do think they will not listen to me, and they will end up taking a quarterback, even though it is just an organization in the Carolina Panthers that, quite frankly, they can mess up a one-car funeral procession these days. So assuming the Panthers land another top 3 pick, they will draft another quarterback to replace Young. Begrudgingly, I will say onsides.
After a shaky start to the season, Michigan head coach Jerome Moore has announced that the team will switch quarterbacks and will start Alex Orji over Davis Warren this weekend against USC. Warren is averaging just 148 passing yards a game with 2 touchdowns and 6 picks for the 2-1 Wolverines. So onsides, offsides, Michigan should have started Orji from the very start.
Yes, onsides. Like, I was stunned when we talked to John Jansen 2 weeks before the football season started, and he said, I don't think Alex Orji's going to win the job. It's going to be Davis Warren. Now, I don't know if Orji can throw the football, but he's capable of running. So run, be Michigan, and eventually you got to let him throw the football a bit. Now, Davis Warren has been terrible. The line has not been good. I know that Mullings was able to run the football over the weekend, but for the most part, in the 2 games prior to that, it wasn't like the run game did him any favors. So that whole offense is a mess. But that's why I would start the quarterback with the higher ceiling. It's like the same thing with the Steelers. I know it's different, but Justin Fields at this stage of his career, even though he hasn't played great through the first 2 games of the season, has a higher ceiling than Russell Wilson. So that's why when neither option are great, you should go with the guy with the higher ceiling and just let him see what he could do throughout the course of the season. So Michigan should have started Alex Orji from the start. Yeah, absolutely onsides.
After Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers went down with an injury, the Longhorn star went from the Heisman favorite to 6th on the list, while Miami Hurricane signal caller Cam Ward took the lead as the Heisman favorite at plus 550. Ole Miss's Jackson Dart is second at plus 650, with Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe, Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava, and Oregon's Dylan Gabriel. I tried. That's the best I could do. It's going to be Nico from now on.
You know what we messed up here? I think we both started saying it like it was Italian. Like
yeah,
Nico Iamaleava. It's Iamaleava. I think is how you say it. Iamaleava.
Iamaleava.
Yeah, Nico Iamaleava is how you say it. For a while, I was saying it Nico Iamaleava. Like I was about to have like rigatoni and meatballs for crying out loud. So it's a tough one, but I just like how you kind of put the Italian spin on it, Stu.
Yeah, it's going to say it's Tua took a while, so I think this is the next
Tungo Vailoa.
Yeah. Anyways, him along with Dylan Gabriel of Oregon, those round out the top 5. Onsides, offsides, Cam Ward of Miami will win the Heisman Trophy this year.
You know, I'll give you a little hot take here. Look at Pitt's schedule. I think most people have penciled in Miami to win the ACC. Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if Pitt, after that big backyard brawl victory and what they've been able to do the last 2 weeks, gives Miami a little run for their money. But no, I don't think Cam Ward's going to win the award. He is one of the better quarterbacks in the nation. But do I think Miami, they could win their conference, and if they win their conference, he could win the trophy and the Quinn Ewers injury, but I'll take the field on that. And Tennessee, man, that's the team that I'm most impressed with through the first 3 weeks of the college football season. And even Josh Pater joined us last week. I said, hey, you know, between Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Missouri, who's the team that you think is the best? And he said easily Tennessee, and Tennessee's a national championship contender this year, which I was not expecting to say that. But I'll take the field when you say Cam Ward of the field, so I'll go offside.
Offsides.
All right, real quick, the Georgia Bulldogs fell from the number 1 spot to number 2 after a 13-12 come-from-behind victory over Kentucky. Highly touted quarterback Carson Beck struggled, throwing for just 160 yards with no touchdowns as the offense put up just 262 total yards. So onsides, offsides, you still believe Georgia will be in the national title game?
Yes, onsides. And Kirby Smart loved that performance because they still won the game. And now he could critically coach his kids, and his kids can't say, but coach, we're Georgia, we're big bad Georgia, we're the best team in the country. It's inevitable that we're going to go win a championship and be in the championship game, because he was so happy afterwards where he was like, hey, we won, but now we could really coach our kids up. That's like a smell and salts game. That's what it is. He's going to be taking the smell and salts and throwing them under his players' noses and basically be saying, all right, it's go time. Now we're going to coach you tough, because that was a bad performance up against Kentucky where they only won by 1 point. But they're still Georgia, and outside of Georgia, Texas is probably the strongest national championship contender, and you have a lot of teams that need to prove their worth. But that's going to be a fun game coming up in 2 weeks, Georgia and Alabama.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, rock and roll in hour number 3 of our radio program. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We're broadcasting to you live today in Philadelphia. We have one more hour to play. I'll be going to the Eagles and Falcons game tonight. That will wrap up week 2 of the National Football League season. Let's do a further deep dive into the AFC North. Trey Boston, by the way, is going to join us coming up at 5:20 p.m. Eastern Time. The former Carolina Panthers defensive back. The big news in the NFL today. You know, if I would have told you this on Friday, going into the weekend, that on Monday we'd be talking about the Carolina Panthers benching Bryce Young, I would say, oh, you mean because he got hurt? I wouldn't think it would just be an outright benching, but the Panthers have benched Bryce Young. So that's pretty much the end of the Bryce Young era in Carolina, and he is the biggest draft bust for the number 1 overall pick that I've ever seen in the history of the NFL, because, like, Jamarcus Russell is just a bust, right? That happens. It's a one-off. But when you not only move up in the draft and you give all those future resources, and then Frank Reich wanted to draft C.J. Stroud, and the owner usurped him, and then C.J. Stroud goes out to be a stud in this league and have one of the greatest rookie seasons we've ever seen, and then you're left with Bryce Young, who ends up being a bust, and I get it, it's a dysfunctional situation, and the Panthers are just the definition of an inept franchise, and to give up on him, though, after 2 games in to a new season with a new coaching staff, when I was sold that even though Canales probably wouldn't have got hired by any other team in the NFL, the reason why you're hiring Canales is because of what he did in Seattle, what he did in Tampa Bay, and improving quarterbacks like Geno Smith and improving a Baker Mayfield, I would have never believed it. Like, Stu, we'll talk about the AFC North in just a second. But if you would have told me this on Friday, that after 2 games, and I get it, the Panthers are terrible, Bryce Young, it's not only the Panthers' fault, they get the majority of the blame, but Bryce Young hasn't looked like he's even been close to the quarterback that he was at Alabama or capable of playing that way. And I haven't even seen any moments where there's like some positivity where you can at least look at it and say, okay, I could see this coming together. Even with all that stuff being said, I would have, you could have given me 15 guesses on what the storylines would have been on a Monday after a very busy football Sunday. And I knew the Chargers were going to smack the Panthers. Heck, I picked the Chargers on the air, which, by the way, everyone likes to point out all my wrong picks, and trust me, I point out my wrong picks as well. Out of the 3 picks I made this weekend, we are right now 2-0. We need the Eagles tonight laying, which I think it was 6.5, and I didn't know A.J. Brown was going to be out of the game, but I still like the Eagles on the number tonight. But the Chargers were a lock when it was a 4.5-point spread. I couldn't believe it, and I love Ariel Epstein. Happy 30th birthday to her, but when she told us that she was taking the Panthers in this game, plus the 4.5 points, I couldn't believe it. But with all that stuff being said, Stu, I would have never, ever thought that today we would be sitting here talking about Bryce Young getting benched 2 games into the season.
Me neither, and look, I think most people thought they would be, if not the worst team, one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the league.
Bottom 3.
This was going to be a rebuild year. This wasn't a win now situation. You have the new coach in there. You figure, okay, he's at the very least going to get half the season, 10 games. And okay, if he's a nightmare after that, 10 games, then okay, maybe then they make the move. But 2 games into the season, it just feels really, really premature and really early.
Yeah, and this is a Canales decision. I was just reading Jordan Schultz that people in the organization were shocked. Canales gets up in front of the podium. He says this is a him decision. Because, right, when you first saw this, Stu, wasn't the initial reaction, and trust me, no one enjoys slamming David Tepper and making fun of David Tepper more than me, but wasn't the first reaction, oh, here is David Tepper again, putting his hands in the cookie jar and doing something that makes no sense. Like, I thought this was definitely a Tepper decision, but I actually believe the Panthers that this is a Dave Canales decision, because the thing is, if I'm David Tepper, I'm telling Dave Canales, I hired you to try to fix or attempt to fix Bryce Young. And after 2 games, the guy that I hired says Bryce Young is basically unfixable and he's broken beyond repair. So even though Tepper puts his hands on almost every situation, I actually think this is the rare circumstance where he actually allowed his football people make the decisions. And Dave Canales is like, Bryce Young's done. I'm trying to win some games this year, even though we're not going to win a lot. And in some crazy world, Andy Dalton, who's not going to be any good, and maybe they beat the Raiders this weekend, who knows? That would be typical NFL. And the Raiders aren't that good, even though after they just got a big victory up against the Ravens. But, like, Stu, I genuinely believe that this was a Canales decision that the owner obviously signed off on, but this was not driven by David Tepper. I'm really surprised I'm saying that, but that's the way that I genuinely feel about this one.
Yeah, and like you said, when it first came out, that was my first reaction as well, because everything this owner seems to touch, it does not turn to gold. It turns to the opposite of gold. So
trash.
Yeah.
Garbage.
Trash, to say the very least. So when I that was my initial reaction as well. But yeah, seeing Canales' comments, it does feel like it is his decision.
And you know what I'm surprised about? And we'll bring this up with Trey Boston in a bit when he joins us at 5:20 p.m. Eastern Time. Even though I've been imploring, this is going to be me being a hypocrite here. I fully acknowledge that. Even though I've been imploring David Tepper to allow his football people to make the decisions, I'm actually surprised that David Tepper actually allowed that to happen and didn't override Dave Canales. Because Tepper, I know he probably doesn't think Bryce Young is the franchise quarterback anymore, but he wanted Bryce Young. And to make this decision a year and 2 games in and not at least have Canales coach up Young for 2 months or even a month and a half. That's the surprising part to me, that Tepper, who always likes to control decisions and influence decisions, actually allowed Dave Canales to make this decision. Like, it's weird. It's weird to try to turn this and spin this into a positive, but when you're a Panthers fan, and I'm not one, but I'm thinking about what I'm going to say to Mac and Bone when I go on their show on WFNZ and I do my weekly hit on them on Football Fridays. That's how I'm going to say it. The only positive you could say if you're a Panthers fan, because this is just a disaster and a terrible situation, is at least David Tepper finally allowed the football people that he hired to make the football decision what they thought is in the best interest of the team. Because I'm still shocked, Stu, that Tepper didn't say, guys, we gave up so many resources for Bryce Young. We've hired you, Dave Canales, to fix Bryce Young. And after 2 games, he said, okay, you know what, Dave Canales, you don't want to start Bryce Young? I'll let you not start Bryce Young. That's what I'm shocked about by this the most.
It doesn't feel like, yes, I agree. Like I said, I just don't have any confidence in Tepper, so this is something where it's very surprising, to say the least.
Alrighty, let's get into the AFC North before we get into Trey Boston. I walked into this season like most, thinking the AFC North by far and away was the best division in football. Ravens, after 2 games, 0-2. Bengals, after 2 games, 0-2. Browns, 1-1, but they beat the Jaguars. And the Steelers are sitting there at 2-0. You know what's funny, Stu? I look at those 4 teams, how the Steelers are 2-0 with an offense that looks like it's stuck in the 1940s. And quite frankly, the 1940s offenses were probably even better than what we've seen from the Steelers. It's kind of just bizarre that when we look at the AFC North, I have zero confidence in the Steelers. And they're sitting there at 2-0. And quite frankly, I have more confidence in the Bengals at 0-2 to not only win this division, but maybe find a way to take down Kansas City and get to the Super Bowl. That I have more confidence in the Bengals after an 0-2 start than the Steelers sitting there at 2-0. Do you agree with that sentiment, that you believe more in the Bengals at 0-2 than the Steelers sitting in at 2-0?
Yeah, I think the Steelers 2-0 is just a record in the product of, okay, they beat the Broncos like that. That's
and
not
they beat the Falcons when old man Cousins was walking on in off an Achilles injury.
Right, and the Bengals look. Obviously, the record isn't pretty, but they could have easily beaten the Chiefs. I think there is without a doubt they could have easily won that game.
Yeah. So if the defender just wasn't a dope and just let the play on out, they would have been 1-1, and we're all singing the praises of the Bengals today. We're still singing the praises of the Bengals today, even at 0-2. Because, yes, they blew that game, but still, they're the only team in the AFC that has shown the ability to beat Kansas City consistently. And, they beat them. They were on that 3-game win streak. They beat them once in the AFC Championship game. Even at 0-2, they get the benefit of the doubt because they've done this before where they get off to these crappy starts and they still find a way to turn it around.
Yeah, and it's amazing that a team this good sometimes just doesn't start off well, but you'll also get T. Higgins back. You'll get him healthy and up to speed. I know we're still, the fact that Chase was absent for most of the summer, that also a factor. Like, I just think the ceiling of this team is so much more higher. And obviously you have Joe Burrow, who, nothing against Justin Fields, but Joe Burrow is just in a totally different class.
Yeah, and the Bills are afraid of Mahomes. The Texans, will see how they go up against Mahomes, right? There's an unknown, even though a lot of people are high and bullish on the Texans. But when you look at a team like the Bengals, they may not beat the Chiefs, but they're not afraid of Mahomes. And Hendrickson had one of the great performances that you'll see from a defensive player, and it's a shame that he didn't get a victory yesterday. So to answer the question, is the AFC North overrated? Well, I think then I need to give you my thoughts on these 4 teams. The Bengals, I still think, will be fine. Cincinnati, after the first 4 games of the season, they're going to be 2-2. They'll beat up on the Commanders on Monday Night Football, and then they'll beat the Carolina. If they can't beat the Carolina Panthers, okay, I will then have a funeral for the Cincinnati Bengals on that October 30th show. Because there is no way they're going to lose to the Carolina. Oh, hold on, Stu. Andy Dalton revenge game?
Oh, that's right.
Andy Dalton revenge game? And how about, I knew he was on the staff, but how about Marvin Lewis on Antonio Pierce's staff talking about former Cincinnati Bengals. As what, the assistant head coach he is for Antonio Pierce?
Yeah, he is one of the veteran assistants that they brought in for Pierce, yes.
And they were together at Arizona State under Herm Edwards when Herm Edwards was the coach of the Sun Devils, which I think is maybe one of the funniest press conference moments of all time. Do you have any clue what I'm talking about?
Yes, the reference of the mascot,
Devil's Digest?
Right? Yes.
The reporter goes, oh, so-and-so from Devil's Digest, and Herm talked about something about it. I was like, Mom once warned him of the devil, and he had, he's the head coach of the team, and he had no clue that the mascot, and they were called the Sun Devils. It was one of the great moments, and funny moments in media coach interactions. But I look at the AFC North. The Ravens are at 0-2. I think the Ravens win this weekend up against the Cowboys, but they got a tough schedule. For that team to be 0-2, and I know they lost by not being able to get a toe down with Isaiah Likely up against the Chiefs. And then yesterday they just gagged away a game up against the Raiders. But they have a tough schedule. They play the Cowboys this weekend. I think they win. But after that, they play the Bills on Sunday Night Football. And then they get the Bengals. They got to go win 2 out of this next 3. If they don't win 2 out of the next 3, that's a problem. That is a problem for the Baltimore Ravens. But that's a Ravens team that I think we may need to reevaluate them, but I'm not going to press the panic button yet because I want to see what they do in the next 3 weeks up against the Cowboys, the Bills, and the Bengals. Nothing easy. So I'm monitoring the Ravens. The Bengals, I think, will turn it around. The Bengals, I think, will win this division. The Browns, I don't walk away from that game feeling all that great about the Browns. I don't. They are a 1-1 football team. I have zero trust in the quarterback on the field or off the field with Deshaun Watson. And the Steelers, I know this is what Tomlin does. You win games based off your defense. You win games ugly. He's never been below 500. I totally get that. But Justin Fields, he should still be the guy, in my opinion, instead of Russell Wilson, because they're 2-0. But it's not like Justin Fields is running away with this opportunity. But with that being said, it's tough to even evaluate Justin Fields, and I hate to make excuses for him, but this offensive line in Pittsburgh stinks. One of the biggest lies we were told all offseason was, the Steelers, right, they improved their offensive line. The Steelers now have a formidable offensive line. That offensive line is terrible. And that game yesterday, I don't know how much you watched of it, Stu, but the Broncos and the Steelers, for that to be in a 4 o'clock, 4:25 p.m. Eastern time window when there's only 3 games going on, it was a disservice to the listening audience, to the viewers. Seriously, put that game in London and start that game at 9:30 a.m. when people are late waking up and people on the West Coast just miss it probably in its entirety. That game, Steelers and Broncos, the offense was absolutely positively putrid in that one. The offense was offensive. That was one of the... I haven't remembered seeing a football game that was that painful to watch, maybe since, and this could be going back too many years, but you remember that Bills-Jaguars playoff game in Jacksonville? That was the final year of Tyrod Taylor in Buffalo before they ended up getting Josh Allen. I think the final was 6-3 or 9-3, 9-6, something like that. I haven't seen that bad of an offensive game in a while is what I saw yesterday with the Steelers and the Broncos.
I would say the Raiders-Vikings last year, 6-3, was in that ballpark. That was really, really bad.
Well, you know what? You are a bona fide expert of bad offensive football.
A lot of bad offense, yes.
So, long story short, I don't believe in the Steelers. I don't believe in the Browns. The Bengals I do believe in, but they're an 0-2 hole. And the Ravens I'm monitoring. I thought this division top to bottom was going to be awesome. And I thought all 4 teams, even the Steelers, who I was a little bit down on before the year, I thought all 4 teams would be in contention for a playoff spot. Yeah, the AFC North is a tad overrated. We'll see long-term where we are in a few weeks with the Ravens. But this division I thought was going to be all that, well-rounded, and you could order those teams up any way you want, 1 through 4. If the Steelers win this division, even though they're 2-0 right now, I'd be shocked. If the Browns win this division, I'd be shocked. I still think Cincinnati is going to win it, and I'm not going to count out the Ravens, but I don't like what I've seen from the Ravens early on. Alrighty, it is Zach Gelb Show, live in Philadelphia, as I'm going to the Eagles-Falcons game to wrap up Week 2 tonight. We thank our friends at Sports Radio 94 WIP for housing us today for the show. We still got 45 minutes to play or so in this edition of the Zach Gelb Show on a big football Monday after all the craziness in college football on Saturday and then what we got to see on Sunday in the NFL. And we'll talk to Trey Boston when we come on back, the former Carolina Panthers defensive back, as Trey Boston knows the Panthers very well, and the Carolina Panthers made a stunning move today. Even regardless of what you think about if Bryce Young was going to be a good quarterback or not, for him to get benched in his second year and for him to not make it through to game 3 as a starting quarterback with the new coach in there in Dave Canales, it is stunning. Even though it never looked like Bryce Young was going to put it together, it's stunning that they're going back to Andy Dalton. So we'll talk to Trey Boston next. It is the Zach Gelb Show right here, but where else? The Infinity Sports Network. Football is back, and what better way to celebrate than winning some cash with Sleeper Picks? Sleeper Picks is a fantasy game, but you could win real money. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If your picks are right, you win. You can pick up to 8 players to win up to 100 times your money. And Sleeper has a couple huge offers to kickstart the football season. For new users, Sleeper will match your first deposit with up to $100 credit to your account. If you already played, Sleeper's got discounted player projections for you every week of the season. So download the Sleeper app now and use promo code SCORE, that's SCORE, and your first deposit will be doubled with the credit up to $100. What are you waiting for? Download Sleeper today and use code SCORE for a credit up to $100 match on your first deposit. That's code SCORE. Must be 18 years in most states and in state where it is legal. Promo code and other restrictions apply. Visit sleeper.com. Please wager responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-426-2537 for help. Paid for by Blitz Studios.
You're in a 4-minute break. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. 30 seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Infinity Sports Network.
Alrighty, rocking and rolling. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Trey Boston is here with us right now, the former Carolina Panthers safety. The big news today, and it was actually extremely stunning, that the Carolina Panthers have benched Bryce Young 2 games into the season. No more for Bryce. Now they'll turn their attention to Andy Dalton, and Trey Boston is here with us right now. Trey, I know it's been a while, but appreciate the time as always. How you been?
Oh, man, I've been good, man. Appreciate you having me back, man. Like you're saying, it's a little crazy around here.
Yeah, when you saw that breaking news from Tom Pelissero that after 2 games into a new coaching staff that the Carolina Panthers are benching Bryce Young and going back to 36-year-old Andy Dalton, how did you process that one?
Well, I processed it as they felt like they needed change. And I think they believe that their O-line has been playing well enough. They believe that receivers have been getting open. And it sounds like people feel like Bryce might be the problem, which is unfortunate. 2 games in, you feel like there's so many games, 15 more to get your act right, to get together with this new staff. But I think they feel with the veteran Andy Dalton that they can get the job done. And they've seen him last year come in, be productive. Can they get that same Andy Dalton? I believe he's one of the best backup starters in this league. Can he help this team win ball games? I think right now they're just in dire need of showing that they can be competitive and win ball games.
Do you agree with this decision that Dave Canales was behind today to bench Bryce Young, knowing how much they gave up to get Bryce Young to Carolina, how early he still is in his young career?
Yeah, I think we're thinking about 2 different things. Dave Canales didn't draft Bryce Young. He has no responsibility in any of the capital that comes with that. What Dave is responsible for is leading this team to get wins. Right now, I think Dave is saying, right now, we feel like Andy Dalton gives us that best chance. Again, it's not an easy league to win games in. And right now, I think they're just in that mode of we have to show we can play productive ball. And whether it's right or wrong, I think Dave has that ability to make that choice. I'm not in those meeting rooms. I'm not seeing every single play and what they're coaching up Bryce to do. But if coach makes that call, I think the team has to, again, believe in it and know that, hey, we got to stick with this. We got 15 games left. Be positive, knowing that they can get the job done.
Here's what I'm shocked about, Trey Boston, because when I first saw the news, I'm like, oh, this has to be a David Tepper decision. But I actually believe Dave Canales when he says, I made this decision. I'm just surprised that David Tepper, knowing all the history of Bryce Young and how much they traded up to go get him and what C.J. Stroud is doing as well and all those storylines, that David Tepper actually signed off on this and is letting his football people make the actual football decisions.
No, I think that's smart. I think everybody on the outside noise is going to put so much on Bryce being because of the capital that came with him. They're gonna always add him to CJ. Oh, we got to start him. You have to win ball games. That's the only thing you're obligated to do. And again, it's a ballsy call. I mean, we're going into week 3. This is something that's going to light it up. But this might just be what everybody and each party needs to find themselves into the win column.
I know it wasn't an attractive job, the Panthers, and Canales probably doesn't get hired by any other team. But if I'm David Tepper, aren't you saying, well, why the heck did I hire you? I brought you in because of what you do with quarterbacks, and after 2 games, you're giving up on the number 1 overall pick from 2 years ago? That's what I would be saying if I'm Tepper.
Hey, listen, again, that's another guy I can't speak for. I mean, you got to live with your decisions, and that's just responsibility of all grown men. Whatever decisions you make, you got to live with it. You got to allow that decision to make the best decisions they can for this team. I mean, if he's a guru, maybe he's going to Andy Dalton for that exact reason, knowing that maybe Andy can make the throws that he needs him to make to win ball games. You got to not only make throws, but defense has to play better as well. So you're going to see both of these teams, the size of the ball playing better, hopefully, off of this jump of energy is probably going to give this team. But if not, we're in a rude awakening for a long season. But I believe in the guys, man. 15 games. This is not time to hit the panic button at all.
No, I respect your optimism. I do a weekly hit on WFNZ with my guys, Mac and Bone. Trey, this season's over. They got no hope. I know players never give up. This season's over. This team stinks.
Hey, Zach. Hey, that's crazy. That's what the people want you to think. That's when we're in the locker room telling everybody they don't believe in us. Nobody believes but the men inside this locker room. Listen, I've been there. I've done that. I know what it feels like. And that's why it's so important for those guys in that locker room to stick together because, again, optimism is out the window for a lot of people. And that's why it's so important for the guys in that building to understand, capitalize a week at a time, man, a brick by brick. That's it. Don't worry about 2 games, 3 games ahead. The next game, Andy Dalton could get the job done this weekend. It's all about execution in this league. That's why I believe they're making this call because they believe that they can execute at a higher level. I'm hoping that the boys can bring some juice around there, keep their heads up. But right now, if you look on the outside, if you look at the fans, if you look at the media, they're going to make you feel like you just said, Zach, the season is over. And you have a long season if you feel like in week 2, going into 3, it is over. Your season will suck. Guys, do not allow that to happen. I have to stay positive for the boys.
I know that you grew up in the area, right? You went to college there. You played for the Panthers. To see what this franchise has become, and you knowing what this team used to be, gotta be. I know you're positive. I respect the optimism, Trey Boston. But, man, this has got to be painful for you to watch knowing what this team used to be.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is. I mean, you build a foundation that you believe should be sustainable. There's ways that you talk about certain teams around the leagues, and you know their style of ball. You know what type of team they are, and I believe that Carolina had a DNA. We did have something that we can always rely on. We were going to run the ball, play hard-nosed defense. We had guys who you could always count on, tons of veterans around who could lead the troops. They might not move as fast as everybody else, but dang if they didn't know how to be in their positions, do the right things, and lead the young men around them. Like myself at the time, being a young man who can lean on Roman Harper, Luke Kuechly's, Charles Johnson's, Thomas Davis's, Cortland Finnegan's, Jared Allen's, Josh Norman's. There's so many guys, and that's just on my side of the ball. So for us, it's why we're so passionate about trying to help, about trying to stay optimistic, about trying to be positive, because we've been there, we've done that, and I would hate for former players to feel like, oh, they don't support us or they think less of us. We still support them. We want the best for them. We try to come around as much as we can to help. I mean, right now, it's not the time, like I say, to throw in the towel. It's the old heads. We just got to embrace it. It does suck a little bit, but you got to stay through and thick, thick and through. So one day when the time comes back around, we were still here to see it flourish. But it's times like this that make you, it's that pain that allows you to grow later on. So we're here. We're here. Yeah, it sucks, but we're here.
Let me ask you 2 more things, Trey Boston, before we let you run. So, obviously, you talked about why this move was made, because Dave Canales thinks Andy Dalton gives him a better chance to win than Bryce Young. I look at this move, and I think this is it for Bryce Young in Carolina. He may get a few starts down the road, but this is the beginning of the end. You being a former player in this league, what would your message be if, let's say, you were a veteran in that locker room to Bryce Young today?
I mean, I've talked to Bryce Young personally, and I've told him the first time I met him, man, I love his game. Stay confident. know your abilities, and believe in them. You're going to get protected one day. Know yourself, really, because it's easy to lose yourself, man. When you're in the limelight, first pick, all this capital for you. Everybody and their mom knows CJ was, we should have got CJ. There's so much pressure on that kid. But for me, it's go out there, have fun, do what you've been doing. You've always been a winner. Win. We got your back. You throw a pick, we don't care. We're going to go back there on defense, get you the ball back with the turnover. If they score, we still don't care. We believe that you're going to go down there and score, and then we're going to get you the ball back. For me, it's that optimism of letting your teammates know, man, I got your back. So for me, seeing it right now, I hear those pressers. I think that's we're getting towards that zone of losing confidence. Do guys come around like I'm saying and talk to him? Do guys really believe in what they have going on? And I think that's where you got to find that recipe, or who are the guys, no matter who you go with, who are having that same talk with Andy Dalton this week, knowing that he could play elite ball with he's been in. Hey, we saw what Joe Flacco did last season. But who would have ever thought that? So for me, there's still tons of ball left in the season to rally the troops. Let's get this going. Start with this week, get one win, and stack those bad boys up. You win 2 in a row, now you're 2-2. Now you win 3 in a row, you're 3-2. Win a few ball games, and we're not even talking about this anymore. But it's a mindset. It's a mindset. You gotta believe it. You gotta want it. You gotta put in the work, because you can't cheat the grind.
Last thing I'll ask you. We know what this move is. This is Dave Canales, right, saying I could win more football games with Andy Dalton, even though that seems a little bit crazy to me. If Canales doesn't start winning some games, and I don't expect this to turn around, could we see another one-and-done coach with the Panthers? Is that something that has even entered your mind yet?
No way, bro. No way.
So you think Canales is definitely back next year?
I think he has to be back for 3 years. It just doesn't matter what he does. I think you have to give one coach the ability to do something with what they're trying to do. I mean, it's not easy to build a team. So for me, I think you have to give Dave some time, no matter how bad the season looks. But you got to give somebody the ability to build a team and roster like they would like it. Because if you go hey. Nothing's promised in this league. There could be somebody who's an amazing coach who they say, I got to go get. But if there's not that one guy who you say we must go get, everybody's attacking, everybody wants him to have their job, I think you have to live with this decision and allow it to play out and see where it takes you. And if that takes you into where it's at now, then that's something that you have to live with. But that's a grown man decision.
And that's the thing. I appreciate the patience, and I think they need to have patience and follow a plan. They're going to be picking in the top 3. They're probably going to have the number 1 overall pick. I'm sorry to do this to you, but it's just the way that I feel. I'm not taking a quarterback in the 2025 draft. I'm doing what the Bears did, right? You trade back the pick, find the sucker to come up to 1, and then 2026 go get your quarterback, because this team, they just need more talent, Trey.
Yeah. I mean, Zach, you're not lying.
Right. Maybe we should run the Panthers for crying out loud, Trey Boston.
Hey, Zach, it's just the name of the game. There's different ways of skinning a cat, but I think, right now they got to figure out what is the game plan, and I think they got to stick to it.
Trey, appreciate it. Thanks so much for doing this today. I know it's a busy day. Thanks for doing this.
No, appreciate you, boss man. You have a great one.
You got it. There he is, former Carolina Panther safety Trey Boston, joining us on the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. All righty, let's take a timeout. Hey, I respect the optimism of Trey Boston, and he's trying to believe in Andy Dalton. He loves that organization. But a successful season for this team is picking at 3rd in the draft. All right, and they're going to be picking 1. They definitely are. And can they go beat the Raiders on Sunday? Yes, it's not because the Panthers are any good. It's because the Raiders are the Raiders. Even if the Raiders beat the Ravens, that would be the most Raiders thing possible, to then go lose to the Carolina Panthers and they put Andy Dalton in at quarterback. But to me, this is it for Bryce Young. Bryce Young is donezo with the Panthers. I don't even care if he starts more games at the end of the year. And now Dave Canales has to have this locker room respond. Because if Dave doesn't get this team to respond, Tepper probably isn't in love with this move, but he signed off on it because he allowed his football people to actually make the football decisions, which for once he finally did that. There is a chance that he's done after this year. But I understand Trey's point of you got to give someone time. And I say this with a coach like Canales coming in, taking over a terrible and a putrid situation. Year one's a wash, year two improve, and then year three go make the playoffs. But this team is so far away. So far away. So you make this big move, you basically signal the end of the Bryce Young era today. Now you have to have your team respond. Even if you don't win games, you got to have your team respond and play better. And that's how you end up keeping your job for next year. I think all options are on the table. Zach Gelb here with you on the Infinity Sports Network. We go to a no-huddle offense next, but first up with the latest Infinity Sports Network update. Here he is, the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Well, the 0-2 Panthers have taken a bold step, benching Bryce Young, and will start Andy Dalton, the first big decision that new head coach Dave Canales has to tackle, and it's the former first-round pick, the former top pick overall, that pays the price with a 2-16 record so far in his career. Justin Jefferson is day-to-day with a quad contusion, while the Chiefs' Isaiah Pacheco is going to miss 6 to 8 weeks with a fractured fibula. Cooper Kupp could be headed to IR with an ankle injury, as head coach Sean McVay said he's expected to miss extended time, while the Bucs have not ruled out Vita Vea for Sunday against the Broncos despite a leg injury. And the Dolphins bring in another quarterback with Tua Tagovailoa dealing with another concussion, signing Tyler Huntley off the Browns practice squad. The Falcons host the Eagles in the Monday night matchup. Philly got off to a good start, getting 3 touchdowns from Saquon Barkley in the season-opening win, while Kirk Cousins was ineffective in his Falcons debut after signing the big free agent deal, throwing a pair of interceptions, among other things. Sidney Crosby signs a 2-year extension with the Penguins worth over $17 million. I'm Rich Ackerman.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Follow us on X. Our handle is INF Sports Network. That's INF Sports Network on X.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick. From the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All right, it's time to answer Ask the Pros question of the day. It's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Danny in Philadelphia says, Zach, who do you think wins the game tonight between the Eagles and the Falcons that you're attending? You could submit a question by tweeting at INF Sportsnet or at Zach Gelb using the hashtag Ask the Pros. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. I think the Eagles win tonight. Even with A.J. Brown being out of the game, maybe it ends up being a little closer game than one would think. But I would say that the Eagles' defense, which was not great in Week 1, up against the Green Bay Packers, obviously, I think they're going to make Kirk Cousins look like an older quarterback that's coming off a really tough injury. Like, Kirk Cousins did not move well in that Week 1 performance up against the Steelers. You know, the Steelers have a great defense led by T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith, and Watt could do whatever he wanted. And the Eagles' defense is not great, but I would think that the Eagles are going to be able to get to Kirk Cousins tonight. Bijan Robinson is going to have a huge game if the Falcons are going to win it, and you're going to need Kyle Pitts and Drake London to come to play. And this Falcons team has a tremendous secondary. They really do, with Simmons. And you take a look around the rest of that secondary with Bates, the safety that came over from the Bengals 2 years ago, and A.J. Terrell. Like, they have a phenomenal, and I mean a phenomenal secondary. So it could be a closer game that you would expect, but the Eagles at home in front of that crowd and Kirk Cousins not being able to be at his best right now, I think the Falcons start the year off 0-2. All righty, let's hit a no-huddle offense.
Touchdowns, sacks, upsets, and last-minute heroics. Another NFL Sunday is in the books, and we've got you covered with the biggest plays and sound bites from another wild week in the National Football League. It's time for No Huddle Offense on the Zach Gelb Show.
Alrighty, let's start it off in H-Town last night. This game was closer than what people did anticipate, and the Chicago Bears offense really was non-existent, and they still had a chance to go secure a victory. When you take a look at this game, C.J. Stroud had 260 yards and a touchdown. Nico Collins continues to be a stud. Had 8 catches, 135 yards and a touchdown. Stephon Diggs only 4 catches for 37 yards. The Texans as a team had 7 total sacks. That just shows you how bad this Bears offensive line was. And Caleb Williams couldn't really do much in the game. 174 yards passing through the air, 2 interceptions, and did have 44 rushing yards. DJ Moore only had 53 yards receiving. Rome Odunze only had 33 yards receiving. And there were some timing issues between Caleb Williams and DJ Moore, and you saw some frustration from the really talented wide receiver in Chicago with DJ Moore. But let's hear C.J. Stroud find Nico Collins for the touchdown score. This was a 28-yard pass, as the Texans did get another victory. They're 2-0 to start the season.
It's now 2nd and 24. Stroud gets the snap. He's back to pass. Blitz coming. Gets picked up. Throws down the middle. Collins has it. Inside the 10. Inside the 5. Collins in the end zone. Touchdown Texans. Nico Collins made the catch and went racing in. A 28-yard scoring strike.
And here's what I loved about that. He picked up a penalty before that score because he was retaliating to what someone did to him. And then he scored the touchdown. And it kind of looked a little Andre Johnson-esque, big physical receiver, muscled his way into the end zone. And the moment he was in the end zone, he threw the defender off of him, which I absolutely loved. So the Chicago Bears, they lose the game. They are 1-1 to start the season. The Texans are 2-0 after securing a 19-13 victory. Stu, what do we got cooking on this one?
Yeah, what is your level of concern for Caleb Williams after 2 starts?
This is another one of those offensive lines where they talk about they revamped the offensive line and they actually improved the offensive line in terms of bringing in new names, but the play on the field isn't all that improved. And that's what we've seen with the few teams. The Giants, right? You saw that with the Chicago Bears and the Pittsburgh Steelers as well, where you're bringing new names, but it doesn't mean the actual play on the field is all that much better. So Williams is going to take some hits. I liked how the team did respond when he got hit as he was running out of bounds. I thought it was a fair hit. So it means that they like their quarterback, but this offensive line is problematic. So these are going to be some of the moments with Caleb Williams, but I'm not going to sit here and say that Caleb Williams is a bust after 2 games, but let's see where we're talking about at the end of the season. Alrighty, next game, the Jets were lucky to get a victory, and they are lucky that they were going up against Will Levis, as the New York Jets did get a victory 24-17 up against the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are 0-2 to start the year. The Jets have a short week. They are 1-1, and they will be playing the Patriots on Thursday Night Football in the swamps of Jersey. Aaron Rodgers, 18-30 in this game, 176 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Garrett Wilson, 4 catches in the contest for 57 yards. Breece Hall had a great touchdown reception at 114 total yards in this one. And what a stinker for Mr. Mayonnaise in Will Levis. 192 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. And also had a terrible fumble in this one. Calvin Ridley did have 77 yards and a touchdown. Let's listen up, though. This is Aaron Rodgers to Breece Hall. This was the incredible touchdown snag that I was talking about for 26 yards.
Empty backfield, 5 wide for Aaron Rodgers. Takes the snap, drops back, 4-man rush. Lobs one down the right side at the goal line, leaping attempt. Wow. Caught! Breece Hall! Oh, that's a Jet touchdown! Breece Hall climbs the ladder and Aaron Rodgers drops in a perfect dime, and the Jets have the lead.
All righty, Stu, what's the question here?
All right, how dangerous are Rodgers and the Jets offense?
Oh, the Jets defense is a problem. I wouldn't call the Jets offense dangerous. The line is still a question. Rodgers is going to get better as the season does go on. Breece Hall showed how good of a back he could be. And I do like Garrett Wilson. I think this could be a solid offense. I think this could be a functioning, good NFL offense. But that doesn't mean that the Jets are going to be this great team if their defense doesn't start playing better, because this is designed for the defense to lead the way and the Jets just to be a solid, functioning offense. So the offense can do that, but the defense has to perform better. Alrighty, the Chargers are 2-0. We know the story today is Bryce Young getting benched by the Carolina Panthers. Andy Dandy Dalton will get the start against the Raiders next week. The Chargers win 26-3. Let's hear J.K. Dobbins rush for a 43-yard score. What a start to the year for J.K. Dobbins.
It's to Dobbins, trying to stretch it. He's got the corner. Dobbins, left sideline, 30, 20, one man to beat. Cuts inside 10, 5, flips into the end zone. Touchdown, Chargers. J.K. Dobbins.
And to start the year, J.K. Dobbins, 27 carries, 266 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Stu, what's the question here?
Can the Chargers be legitimate contenders in the AFC with Harbaugh?
When you mean legitimate contenders, you're saying this season, and to do what? Like win the AFC West? Win a Super Bowl? Get to a Super Bowl?
How about this season, get to an AFC championship game?
No. That's premature. They beat the Raiders and they beat the Panthers. Alrighty, let's pump the brakes a little bit. But I'm encouraged what I'm seeing. We know what their philosophy is, and that is going to be to run the ball a lot. But this team is not ready to go contend. If you want to say make the wild card, okay, I could buy into that a little bit. But to go contend to get to an AFC championship game, please, let's stop with that. The Raiders, they were down big. The Ravens gagged the game away. Here is Daniel Carlson on that game-winning 38-yard field goal. Let's listen up to how it sounded.
Officially a 38-yard field goal for Carlson. He has hit 3 today. It is just inside the left hash. Bobenmeyer the snap. Cole puts it down. Laces are spun. The kick is up. It's angling towards the uprights, and it's good! Daniel Carlson, with 27 seconds to go, puts the Raiders in front 26-23 here in Baltimore.
Sue, what's the question here as Max Crosby has 2 sacks and 4 tackles for loss in this one?
Do you think the Raiders, can they make a push for the playoffs this season?
No, it was one game. Absolutely not. And finally, here is Kyler Murray in a 60-yard touchdown pass to Marvin Harrison Jr.
Murray under center. Takes, play action, a boot to the right. Murray looking downfield. Now lobs it deep. Near side. Harrison caught it at the 20. At the 10. Harrison dives for the end zone. He's in. Touchdown.
And there you go. Marvin Harrison Jr., 4 catches, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns. In this one, James Conner, 122 rushing yards on the ground with the rushing score. Stu, quickly, what's the question here?
Concern about the Rams moving forward.
Yeah, I'm concerned. A lot of injuries on that offensive line, and Cooper Kupp now could be on short-term IR, as I just saw that news was breaking a few moments ago. All righty, that's a wrap from Philly. Big thanks to Trey Boss and everyone here in Philadelphia. Each and every one of you will talk tomorrow back in New York City at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. We out. Bye-bye. Peace.